Chapter 4271. Ha ha ha, it's a success. Green-robed Xiao Hua proudly roared at the ground without using a trace of magic power. Xiao Hua listened to the sound disappear in the sky and smiled without saying anything. In the next few days, Phoenix Body Xiao Hua, Green-robed Xiao Hua, and the others returned to the space early or late. Each of them stood beside Xiao Hua with eyes full of hope. Looking at the land of hope, their hearts were brimming with pride. Describing them as the birth of a new world in their hands was too much of a merit, but the fact that a new world was preserved in their hands was well deserved. Such merit and fortune were not things that ordinary cultivators could come across, and similarly, they were not things that ordinary cultivators could obtain. It's just a matter of time. It's not a success. Green-robed Xiao Hua said after his excitement died down. Green-robed Xiao Hua was stunned. He scratched his head and asked curiously, "There are no more strange beasts in the space? Could it be that fellow Deist has hidden some? Damn it." Xiao Hua was sweating in his heart. He first brought the strange beasts out of the star halo in the sky and sent them to the space where Shenhua continent was located. Then, he had these clones send them to various places. Whether there were any strange beasts in the star halo or not, the clones didn't know. However, Green-robed Xiao Hua exposed it with a single sentence. Obviously, he had the same small plan as Xiao Hua. The strange beasts have been properly arranged, but the disciples of Fragrance cult have not been arranged yet. Xiao Hua said unhappily. "Oh, these little things." Green-robed Xiao Hua said indifferently, "Isn't it just looking for a place with them? Isn't that easy?" Green-robed Xiao Hua said with a smile, "Green-robed fellow Deist is right. The previous desolate continent was not suitable for the human race, but after the apocalypse, although the environment is still different from the hidden immortal continent, it is enough for the disciples of Fragrance cult to survive. I passed by a place that is very suitable for these disciples." Xiao Hua's face lit up. Just as he was about to ask, a figure flashed beside him. Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua appeared in the air. "How was it?" Xiao Hua's eyes lit up again and asked hurriedly. Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua said with a smile that was neither arrogant nor humble, "Fellow Taoists, fortunately, I didn't disappoint you." "Good." Xiao Hua clapped and said, "Fellow Deist has made a great contribution. You flatter me." Confucian cultivator Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, "It's all thanks to fellow immortal green-robed and fellow immortal soul cultivator. The teleportation formation you constructed was very good. With this foundation, this little one's Confucian cultivation secret technique will be very easy to succeed. Therefore, this little one doesn't dare to claim credit." "Haha, you're welcome, you're welcome." The green-robed Xiao Hua proudly looked at Xiao Hua and said with a smile, "I can also be of great use now. It's a pity that no one even knows his name now." Xiao Hua was first stunned, and then he understood that this green-robed Xiao Hua's wisdom and character were the most mature. "Now, he wants to ask for a status from me. Many thanks to the Thunderbolt Venerable." Xiao Hua thanked the green-robed Xiao Hua. "In the future, there will no longer be a green-robed Xiao Hua in this world, only the Thunderbolt Immortal." "Ha ha ha, fellow Deist Xiao, you're welcome, you're welcome." The Thunderbolt Immortal happily helped Xiao Hua up. "Many thanks to Deist Wu." Xiao Hua then saluted the soul cultivator Xiao Hua and said, "In the future, there will be no soul cultivator Xiao Hua in this family, only shaman." Shamans didn't feel much about this status, nodded and said, "Fellow Deist, do as you please." Soon after, Xiao Hua thanked all his clones, one by one, and declared that there will no longer be a clone Xiao Hua in this world. "Now, we should be able to pass through the time turbulence, right?" Xiao Hua then asked Wen Chu somewhat worriedly. "How would Wen Chu know?" He could only shake his head and said with a bitter smile, "There should be no problem with this sage information, but before we use it, who knows what kind of accident will happen. Ari, we must not have any more accidents." Xiao Hua sighed. "We have been wandering in the outside world for too long. We have been here for several tens of thousands of years. We don't care about this anymore." The Thunderbolt Immortal bluntly attacked. "If Xin Xin wants to get married, even an immortal emperor would not be able to stop her. You really have a crow's mouth." Shamans scolded in both anger and amusement. "Let's go, fellow Daoist Feng Wu, let us take a look at that place. Xiao Hua waved his hand, as if he wanted to get rid of these worries, and said, "Okay." Feng Wu let out a long cry, spread her wings and flew to a place. In just a few days, Xiao Hua and the others arrived at a huge mountain range. This mountain range was thousands of feet high, surrounded by rivers, and above the mountain range were ancient trees and vegetation. Previously, Feng Wu had sowed some seeds of grain, and some spiritual herbs, and gradually took shape. Great! This is a blessed land. Xiao Hua's divine sense swept over, and immediately said with a smile, "The disciples of the fragrance cult will be able to pass down the incense of the fragrance cult." The Thunderbolt Immortal pondered for a moment, and said, "There seems to be some long spike beasts nearby. These long spike beasts like to eat small animals. I am afraid that the disciples of the fragrance cult will not be safe here." Xiao Hua rolled his eyes, and said with a smile that was not a smile, "What, fellow Daoist Feng Wu wants to do something?" "Of course." The Thunderbolt Immortal said proudly, "Although they are disciples of the fragrance cult, they have nothing to do with I. But after all, they are of the human race. How can I just stand by and watch? Then I will have to trouble you, fellow Daoist." Xiao Hua was very gratified, and he cupped his hands and smiled. "We will also help." Wu, Wen Chu, Feng Wu, and even Tian Ren and Shi came to join in the fun. Thus, everyone joined hands and laid down a great formation within a radius of 10,000 li. It took them several months to complete their task. However, in the end, all the cultivators were dumbfounded. This great formation had a Dharma formation, an origin formation, a devil formation, and even a soul formation. Although the power of the great formation was there, no one could activate it. Thus, everyone looked at Xiao Hua, who knew that Xiao Hua turned a deaf ear to everyone's expectations, and he flew up, looked at the ground, and then waved his hand and said, "Everyone, we will hide ourselves first. I will release the disciples of the fragrance cult from the Shunhua continent." Although the sect leader of the fragrance cult did not say anything, when he handed the disciples over to I, he did not let the disciples see I's face, because he did not want us to leave any impression on the disciples of the fragrance cult. TSK. Is there a need for that? The Thunderbolt Immortal flew up with some disdain, and like everyone else, he hid himself, but he still had some complaints. When Xiao Hua placed the disciples of the aroma religion in the mountain range, he placed all the cultivation methods, pills, spirit herbs, and magic tools aside. His heart was moved again, and he also placed some of the Dao sect's cultivation methods and secret techniques he had obtained in the aroma religion. He only promised not to embezzle the things of the fragrance cult, but he did not promise not to give them more things. The disciples of the fragrance cult had inherited the method of cultivating the primordial spirit, and also the method of cultivating the nascent soul. It was not too much, was it? After doing all this, Xiao Hua's figure once again teleported to a high altitude, and his hands began to form hand seals. Daoist magic, Confucian cultivation methods, soul cultivation methods, and demonic cultivation methods. When the same magic power, demonic qi, and so on turned into crystals and fell into the void, the entire sky was filled with 9 brilliant colors, and all kinds of fluctuations were like dragons dancing in the air. Rumbling sounds were more deafening than thunder. Xiao Hua's figure turned into a golden body, and when he raised his hands, dozens of rainbow-colored halos were born from his hands, and they were scattered everywhere like chains. Ah! All the disciples of the fragrance cult opened their mouths in surprise, and were somewhat at a loss. Buzz! A strange rumbling sound began to be born from the thunder, like the roar of a god. Then, Xiao Hua's golden body suddenly withdrew, and the chains fell into his hands, followed by tens of thousands of restrictions of various colors. When these restrictions fell into Xiao Hua's hands, he slowly waved his hands and shouted, "Go!" The entire brilliance condensed into the shape of a halo. Xiao Hua then waved his hand, and a jade eye appeared. When Xiao Hua channeled his magic power, the halo hit the jade eye. Clang! The jade eye condensed into the shape of a tiger talisman. Xiao Hua picked up the tiger talisman and casually threw it to a disciple of the fragrance cult. Then he said, "This place is no longer a ruin. This mountain range is where you all will live in the future. In order for you all to survive here, This old man has already built a formation in the nearby mountains. This is the proof to enter and exit the formation. You all should take care of it. You don't need to ask who this old man is. You just need to remember to live well here and cultivate. As long as the orthodoxy of the incense religion can be carried down safely, it will be your contribution. With that, Xiao Hua didn't care about what the tens of thousands of disciples of the fragrance cult were thinking. He waved his hands again, and tens of thousands of thunderbolts fell on the formation. The entire formation slowly lit up, and Xiao Hua's figure turned into a rainbow and flew towards the location of the sun in the sky. We thank Senior. The disciples of the fragrance cult were shocked by Xiao Hua's big move, and they all prostrated on the ground and kowtowed. After Xiao Hua left the mountain range, the thunderbolt immortal almost held his stomach and laughed. He pointed at Xiao Hua and said, "Dao friend, I really admire you." Although the fragrance cult's ancestor didn't want his disciples to see Dao friend's appearance, but Dao friend's actions will leave an impression in their hearts. Won't it be even more unforgettable than seeing Dao friend's appearance? Xiao Hua didn't feel embarrassed seeing that his petty actions were seen through by the thunderbolt immortal. He stiffened his neck and retorted, "What? Do you not want to leave your name? Otherwise, you'll be inside the formation." When he saw that Xiao Hua was about to expose his past, the lightning Daoist's face flushed red, and he was about to interrupt Xiao Hua. However, at this moment, the sound of bamboo flutes suddenly resounded throughout the heavens and the earth. After that, hundreds of millions of flowers appeared out of thin air. At the same time, over 10 dragons and phoenixes appeared in midair while waves of golden threads descended like rain from above Xiao Hua and the others. Ayo, this. What's going on? The thunderbolt immortal turned pale with fright. Because of the birth of these flowers, the entire world was imprisoned. Not to mention sound, even thoughts were difficult to move. -14. Chapter 42-72. Just as the Thunderbolt Immortal's doubts were born, a myriad of phenomena appeared in the surrounding 100 li of space. Farmers plowing the fields, mulberry people raising silkworms, fishermen fishing, hundreds of children chanting, thousands of Buddhas chanting scriptures, and thousands of countries dying. In short, all kinds of worldly phenomena appeared in front of Xiao Hua's eyes. At the same time, a kind of incense that Xiao Hua had never smelled before appeared in his surrounding. This incense was very strange. When Xiao Hua sniffed it, it was as if the entire space was filled with this incense. Moreover, the 100 meridians in his body and the 13200 small points in his body were intoxicated by this incense. A kind of lazy, powerless, and even decadent feeling was naturally born. However, this feeling was only limited to his body. His spirit and thoughts were incomparably active. Previously, Xiao Hua of the heavenly Tao and Xiao Hua of the Karma had passed on to him, but now, in just a short moment, they were all absorbed by him. What was special was that the wood, wind, and lightning essences that had just been absorbed by Xiao Hua's body were fusing dozens of times faster than before. Following this fusion, Xiao Hua's mind expanded in all directions without limit, like a leisurely cloud. Kung kung kung. Another wave of sound rang out from an unknown place. Within this sound, pillars of righteous chi were born like sky-reaching peaks, crazily falling into the void. The originally thin righteous chi immediately filled up. Following the righteous chi's birth, the flying flowers actually shattered, turning into a hurricane that fell into Xiao Hua's body. After the time it took to eat a meal, the sound, the 100 forms, and even the light and shadows also shrank, crazily falling into Xiao Hua's body. Kung! Like the sound of a harp breaking, all the light and shadows and illusions disappeared in this sound. At the same time, an even stranger shadow flew out from Xiao Hua's body, landing at the place where the flying flowers were and disappearing. This. What's going on? The celestial stood blankly in the air, not knowing what to do. As for Xiao Hua, he was dumbstruck. He looked into the distance, his expression like water, not knowing what he was thinking. Sandalwood. Suddenly, body cried out in alarm. Buddha fire. Buddha fire condensed into Buddha crystal. Is it a crystal smaller than an ant? Golden in color and completely transparent? Xiao Hua asked indifferently. Body's head bobbed up and down like a chick pecking at rice, far from his usual calm demeanor. "There are no humans in the great wasteland continent, and we brought the human race in from the ruins," Xiao Hua explained. "Now, we've even averted the apocalypse. These disciples of the incense cult have not only inherited the Tao teachings of the Daoist sect, but they've also inherited the flames of our human race. Not to mention the inheritance of the incense cult, the incense merit of the human race belongs to us. Although I didn't create humans for no reason, the merit of opening the heavens and multiplying them belongs to none other than me. Therefore, this flying flower is a phenomenon caused by the descent of righteous energy from the heavens. It is also the beginning of the process of us receiving the merit of splitting the heavens and condensing the godhood. Divine spark." The thunderclap immortal turned pale with fright. "What is a divine spark? It sounds so high and mighty." Xiao Hua shrugged and said with a bitter smile, "I don't know either. I reckon it's something that matches the body of a half-god." "Fellow Daoist, were you depressed because of this just now?" Wen Chu was also somewhat puzzled. "No." Xiao Hua shook his head and looked into the distance with some puzzlement. "I just felt like I lost something. And the thing I lost is very rare and precious. This feeling is very strange." "What did you lose?" The thunderclap immortal couldn't be bothered to ask about the godhood and continued to ask. "I don't know either. But I have a feeling that I left this place for myself. As if it was nourished by the so-called merit of opening the heavens and multiplying them. It's too profound. I find it hard to understand." Wen Chu shook his head in puzzlement. "However, back then, I received the all-living beings point Wen Chu because of the merit of teaching. Fellow Daoist's merit of opening the heavens must be even more powerful than the merit of teaching, right? I'm afraid that you'll only be able to discover the profoundness of this after charging into the great wasteland continent again." "Haha, that's right." Xiao Hua laughed loudly and looked around. "Since there was a first time, why can't there be a second time or a third time? When this Xiao comes again in the future, this place will definitely be a new world." "Ayo!" At this moment, the shamaness suddenly cried out in alarm. "Fellow Daoist, I seem to have sensed the spiritual sense mark of the Great Snow Mountain. Can you confirm?" Xiao Hua's heart instantly weakened and he asked worriedly. "How would I know?" The shamaness hurriedly explained. "I can only sense the indistinct spiritual sense mark extremely far away. How would I know if it's actually from the Great Snow Mountain or not? Let's go." Xiao Hua suddenly realized. Who cares if it's from the Great Snow Mountain or not? Right now, the most important thing is for us to leave. After saying that, except for the shamaness, all the other clones entered Xiao Hua's body. Xiao Hua and the shamaness simultaneously activated the going south, going north, going south, going north technique and entered the teleportation array under the mountain rain. "Hurry!" Xiao Hua landed in the array and impatiently waved his hand. 9 dragon crystals fell into the teleportation array and then he dragged the Thunderbolt Immortal and Wen Chu out. Together with the shamaness, the 3 clones activated the teleportation array. Under the activation of the 9 dragon crystals, the Soul Cultivator and the Scholar Cultivator gradually found the direction of the teleportation array. Xiao Hua was unable to contain his joy as he entered the teleportation array and shouted, "Fellow Taoists, success or failure depends on this one move, catcher." At this moment, the teleportation array suddenly rumbled and stopped. The already formed teleportation channel also disappeared. "What's going on?" Xiao Hua turned pale with fright and asked, "Fellow Daoist Wu, what happened?" "It seems." The shamaness couldn't confirm and hesitated. "The teleportation channel seems to have hit something." "What did you hit?" Xiao Hua was greatly surprised. He pointed at the dragon crystals that had already turned into powder and said, "Just hitting something can cause the void channel to collapse." "This? I also don't know. The outside of the wilderness is a turbulent flow of time. Anything strange can happen." The shamaness somewhat helplessly replied. It was really strange. The scene he saw when he fell into the wilderness that day suddenly appeared in Xiao Hua's mind. It was a light and shadow. A thin and tall figure appeared in it. That figure was lying helplessly, holding the sword embryo in its right hand, as if it had already fainted. Beside the figure were the black dog and the yellow marten. After this light and shadow appeared, suddenly an indescribable ripple extended behind the figure. It was similar to the fluctuation of the teleportation channel Xiao Hua used to enter the wilderness. But now that he thought about it, this fluctuation came from behind the light and shadow. In other words, it rushed out from the wilderness. How could it possibly collide with the teleportation channel Xiao Hua entered? That day, when the fluctuation collided with the teleportation channel the light and shadow was in, it produced a strange change. The light and shadow shook and quickly disappeared. Now that he thought about it, he was afraid that it fell into the forward ripple, which was the direction of his teleportation channel. Could it be? Xiao Hua's heart was greatly shaken. Could it be that the thin and tall figure, is this Xiao who still hasn't obtained the Dawn Rain continent? Fellow Daoist, fellow Daoist. Not allowing Xiao Hua to think more, the shamaness urged again, do we still need to activate it now? Of course. A moment ago, Xiao Hua still felt that his future was uncertain. But now, Xiao Hua was full of confidence. He waved his hand and took out 9 dragon crystals, instructing, quickly, let's activate the array. This time, our target will definitely be the hidden immortal continent. Okay. The shamaness, the thunderbolt immortal, and Wenchu's spirits were shaken. They activated the teleportation channel. When a ball of brilliance appeared from the teleportation channel, the shamaness activated the channel, which directly pierced into the void. The 3 clones quickly fell into Xiao Hua's space. When Xiao Hua stepped into the void, he somewhat lingered as he looked at the pitch-black darkness outside the great array. He thought to himself, the wilderness, this Xiao is leaving. Perhaps in the future, there will be a chance to come back. Or perhaps, when I come back again, the entire wilderness will be different. As the entire teleportation channel flashed, Xiao Hua's figure disappeared. At the same time that Xiao Hua's figure disappeared, the teleportation channel shook again. A crack actually appeared on the entire teleportation channel. This crack directly pierced into the void and went more than 10 li above the teleportation channel. Immediately, the entire void trembled for a moment and actually froze. The crack in the void existed just like that between the great array and the mountain peak. After an unknown period of time, perhaps 100,000 years, or 1,000,000 years, or even 100 million years, that spatial crack once again shook violently, and a resplendent brilliance was born from within the crack. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Like a thunderclap, the entire spatial crack and the array began to distort. Woo! The sound of wind whistling rose again, and within the light and shadow, 4 extremely long shadows could be seen rushing out from the spatial crack. The one in front was the winged Sakra. The demonic horn of this beast Sakra had already lost its fluctuation. Her figure crashed into the transmission array, and unexpexpectedly, the transmission array was smashed into pieces. Immediately after, the unconscious figures of Yu Mingxin, Yang Haoya, and Wan Wuxin appeared again. They also crashed into the teleportation channel. The teleportation channel originally had some cracks. At this moment, 3 humans and 1 demon came with the power of teleportation and immediately destroyed the teleportation channel. Where is this place? Several days later, Sakra was the first to wake up. She opened her eyes wide and looked around. Then, she looked at the 3 humans. Her face immediately turned sinister. However, just as she bared her fangs and brandished her claws and was about to pounce on them, the space outside the teleportation channel emitted a strange beast's roar. Sakra was slightly taken aback. She hurriedly flew out of the teleportation channel. When she saw the boiling lava outside and a strange beast with a big body, small head, and slender neck in the lava, she couldn't help but be stunned. Chapter 4273. Stunned, Indra released his devil sense again. Looking at the barren surroundings, he rolled his eyes and said to himself with a smile, this place is actually not the ruins. Since there is no more fighting, why should I be in such a hurry to kill the 3 of them? Without them, wouldn't this world be too lonely? So what if I play with them? After saying that, Indra flew away without looking back, no longer paying attention to Yu Mingxin and the other 2. After a few days, Yu Mingxin slowly woke up. She looked around in surprise and even flew out to take a look. Then, she hurriedly woke up Wn Wuxin and Yang Haoya and said, "Two senior brothers, wake up quickly. We seem to have left the ruins and arrived at an unknown continent." While Xiao Hua was activating the incense cult's formation, outside the timelight knot of the Eldritch continent, the void in the distance was distorted. Not to mention the stars, even all the light and space were twisted like fried dough twists. It was completely different from the ordinary space. In this folded and distorted space, a black hole suddenly appeared. After this black hole appeared, thousands of light and shadows burst out from the black hole. Indescribable waves filled the entire space within 10,000 miles. Following this wave, a small dot appeared inexplicably. As soon as it appeared, it immediately teleported to the timelight knot. At this moment, the small dot's figure was revealed. It was that triangular monster. This monster was still spinning and had not stopped, but its huge eyes had already opened slightly. When the eyes opened, the folded and distorted space before the light and shadow rushed towards the timelight knot again. Everything within 10,000 miles was covered in it. Behind this huge eye, there was also an even deeper distorted space like a huge tail. The range of this space distortion was so large and so long that there was an extremely large amount of space distortion. Not to mention space cracks, even space collapses could be found everywhere. This kind of collapse and crack affected countless boundaries and barriers. At this moment, the spatial distortion had already collided with the area enveloped by the timelight knot. Although it had yet to truly collide with the light knot, countless specks of light appeared within several 100,000 kilometers. Within the specks of light, all the distorted space immediately stilled, as if it had been smoothed out. Thousands of phantoms appeared within the specks of light. Huff! The triangular monster let out a long sigh that sounded like a breath. Fist-sized bubbles appeared once again within a radius of hundreds of thousands of kilometers. These bubbles didn't look big, but each of them was an independent space. Each space had its own time. Although the time was extremely similar, there were still minute differences. When the spatial bubble appeared, a slight difference in time also appeared, and the timelight spots were immediately disturbed. All the phantoms returned to a distorted space, but this space was instantly destroyed by the triangular monster. Roar! The triangular monster roared and shot out an unparalleled beam of light from its huge eyes. The beam of light was filled with the power of space and some power of time. When the beam of light fell into the timelight knot, the waterfall-like turbulent flow of time actually paused for a moment. Where it paused, the countless phantoms actually condensed together. At this moment, the triangular monster suddenly disappeared. When it reappeared, it actually turned into a phantom and inserted itself between the phantoms that were about to solidify. However, it was only for a moment. The stagnation of the turbulent flow of time was broken by an even more powerful power of time. The phantoms that had condensed once again dispersed, and the entire timelight knot returned to its original state. Just as the time knot was activated, the silhouette of a teleportation channel appeared within the light knot. This silhouette split into countless copies in an instant. In just a short moment, these countless silhouettes condensed into one at the edge of the light knot and rushed into the void. The black and white silhouette followed the direction that the triangular monster had flown from, and an inexplicable space collapsed at its huge tail. The moment the silhouette disappeared, the entire enormous distorted space began to recede from the distance like a flood. As it receded, all the spatial cracks and spatial collapses were strangely smoothed out. The vast sea of snow seemed to stretch as far as the eye could see. In addition to the snow on the ground, there were also snowflakes in the sky. The snowflakes were like goose feathers, falling all over the sky. They landed on the mountain peaks, in the wilderness, and in the streams that could no longer be seen. The gurgling sound of the streams reverberated in the air, and it was particularly pleasant to listen to in the quiet mountains. Occasionally, the ups and downs of the mountain range would appear in the distance, but it was quickly covered by the nearby mountain peaks. The mountain peaks were not tall, but they were very steep. There were almost no flat paths to climb them. The mountain peaks were not completely covered in snow, and the mountain peaks were not peaceful. As the north wind whistled, it had long blown away the only warmth in the mountain peaks, and the snowflakes that filled the sky also frantically avoided it. When the north wind hit the mountain peaks, it was like a large hand grabbing the accumulated snow and throwing it into the air. As a result, the snowflakes in the air became even more chaotic. When the north wind calmed down, the snowflakes fell again with a rustling sound. The sound of the snowflakes, together with the sound of flowing water, was like a piece of music. The music floated high up in the sky. Wherever the north wind blew, there were bare bluish-black rocks. Occasionally, some dark green roots would poke out from the gaps between the rocks. The injured grass trembled slightly, as if it was intoxicated by the music. At this time, the mountain peaks were a little ugly. They were mottled with some bluish-black spots, and some were pure white. But looking at the pure white spots, it was really a place with thick layers of snow and ice. The ice sculptures and snow on it were very beautiful. In this beauty, there were some strange or ordinary plants, or blooming red plums, or budding spirit flowers, or even green mushrooms that stretched out to the sky to welcome the snowflakes. There were many more. Occasionally, a spiritual beast that looked like a mountain rat would crawl out from the cracks in the mountain rocks and extend its head towards the spiritual flower. However, before it could open its mouth and extend its sharp claws, its extremely bright little eyes turned around vigilantly. Before it could even clearly see what was behind it, a wave of dragon's breath surged towards it like a tidal wave. The spiritual rat's body immediately stiffened as fear appeared in its eyes. It stood dazedly on the ice and snow. At this time, at the bottom of the mountain, in the distance, in the endless snow, there was the sound of footsteps on the snow. A monk wearing a kasaya, wearing a pailu hat, and holding a 9-ringed monk staff in his hand, actually stepped on the snow in this pathless wilderness. With a determined and pious face, wasn't this Chunzong, who was seeking scriptures in the land of bliss? The sound of footsteps crunching was originally ear-piercing, but in this quiet wilderness, combined with the sound of water, wind, and snowflakes, it was extremely harmonious. It reverberated in the wilderness, and a new piece of music was played. However, this harmonious piece of music only lasted for a moment. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Another sound came from behind the monk, disrupting the celestial scene. Then, he saw a muscular draconic horse raising its head, walking and jumping as it followed. It looked very lively. The draconic horse's entire body was pure white. Under its manner, faint golden dragon scales could be faintly seen. As the draconic horse jumped, the tail that was dragging behind it would rise from time to time. When it landed, it would sweep across the ground, stirring up a large amount of snow, causing the snow behind it to fly in all direction. On the forehead of the dragon horse, in the thick manner, a dragon horn was revealed. This dragon horn was a little strange. It was actually in the shape of a crescent moon, and there was a faint halo at the tip of the horn. What was even stranger was not this, but on the back of the dragon horse, where the saddle was supposed to be, there was no saddle. Instead, there were many wooden boxes, and the outer layer of the wooden boxes was wrapped in a thick oilcloth, so no one could see what was inside. The wooden box made a dull sound as the draconic horse jumped. It was as if something heavy had been placed inside. Just as the dragon horse passed by, before the flying snow could fall, another huge fire ape followed. This fire ape had an indifferent look on its face. Although it appeared to be indifferent to everything in the world, it allowed the snow to fall on its head, body, and even its messy fur to be covered in snow. The fire ape carried a magic wand on its shoulder, and its hands were placed on the wand. In its mouth, there was a withered grass root, and it was chewing on it in boredom. Although the fire ape's body emitted a kind of carefree aura, its eyes were fixed on the monk in front of the dragon horse, and it was releasing its yuan sense from time to time to be alert of the surrounding situation. This fire ape was no other demon, it was Yuan Tongtian. After Yuan Tongtian passed by, the snow fell, and another cultivator with thick eyebrows and big eyes, dressed in battle armor, walked over with large strides. This cultivator looked at the snow that had just fallen, and his face was filled with disdain. However, he only snorted, and his breath was like a gust of wind, blowing away the remaining snow. He didn't say anything, and looked at the nearby mountain peak with interest, as if he was admiring it. Chunzong walked in the snow with difficulty. His cloth shoes were already covered in mud and snow, and now they were soaked. Even the lower half of his monk robe was soaked in water, swaying slightly in the wind. Chunzong walked a few steps, then paused for a moment. He stood there and took a few deep breaths, then gritted his teeth, and continued to walk forward. Seeing this, the dragon horse behind him opened its mouth and said in human language, "Monk, do you still think of me as a disciple? I followed you from so far away just to be your mount. How could you turn a blind eye to me? It's fine if you can fly, but you only know how to walk with your feet. I am the Eastern Sea's 10th prince. Do you think it's easy for me to serve you? You want me to put my face as the 10th prince? It's fine if you don't ride me, but you put these tattered scriptures on my back. I clearly told you that I have a dragon shell here. Isn't it better to put these tattered scriptures in the dragon shell than anything else? If you don't have a Chenkuan bag, but with our friendship, I can give this dragon shell to you." Chapter 4274. Amitabha. Chunzong did not even turn his head as he chanted the name of Buddha and continued to walk forward. The Confucian cultivator behind Yuan Tongtian retracted his gaze from the distant scenery and glanced at the dragon horse behind Chunzong. He sneered and said, "One of the requirements of sutra seeking in nirvana is for a monk without any divine powers to walk step by step to Lei-Yin Temple, then from Lei-Yin Temple to Longevity Town. If the monk rides you, how can he seek in nirvana? I really don't know what the East Sea Dragon Palace is thinking. Since they want you to get a share of sutra seeking in nirvana, why do they want you to transform into a dragon horse? Even if you meet demons, you can't fight them. You can only be a decoration. Could it be that you've made a mistake and you can only be a horse before you make up for it? Damn it." Hearing the Confucian cultivator's words, the dragon horse jumped up like a cat whose tail was stepped on. He turned his head and shouted, "Who said I made a mistake? Who said I made a mistake? Do you think I want to accompany you here and walk around like a lunatic? I'm willing to wear the white dragon suit and turn into a horse. What can you do about it? Being a horse for the monk is the dragon palace giving face to the Buddha Lord and the immortal emperor. Besides, the monk is not a monk without any divine powers. He has been walking for more than 200 years. If he didn't have any divine powers, he would have turned into a skeleton." "Shut up." Yuan Tongtian scolded impatiently, "If you two continue to talk nonsense. Do you believe that I won't beat the two of you to death? How dare you, how dare you?" The dragon horse became more anxious and shouted, "Why don't you try beating me? Why don't you try beating me? You're just a fire ape with no background. Just because you flattered the monk earlier, you actually became my senior brother. Why don't you take a piss and look at your own face? What qualifications do you have to be my senior brother?" Amitabha. Chunzong, who was walking in front, finally could not stand it anymore. He turned his head and scolded, "Zhenfeng, you broke the mouth precept again." Bah! The dragon horse who was called Zhenfeng spat. A big mouthful of dragon saliva fell into the snow and smashed a big hole in the ground. Then, he continued to scold, "I've violated many commandments. Not only the verbal commandments, but also the commandments of anger, lust, and so on." When Chunzong heard this, his expression changed. He said indifferently, "If that's the case, then Oh, master." Longma Zhenfeng hurriedly changed the topic and trotted over to Chunzong, saying with a smile, "Disciple was just playing with senior brothers. Don't you feel that it's very lonely in the wilderness and the sea of snow? Wouldn't you be happy if your disciple and senior brother were to entertain you?" Then Dragon Horse Zhenfeng turned around and said to the scholarly cultivator as if asking for help, "Isn't that right, senior martial brother Zhenhan?" Zhenhan's face was filled with contempt and disdain, but he still said, "That's right, junior brother's temper is like this. He also wants to do something for master and doesn't want to lose face in front of master. Master doesn't look at the monk's face but looks at the Buddha's face. You don't look at merit but look at hard work. No matter what, he has accompanied master for more than 100 years. From the Eastern Sea to the Western Paradise and then to the Lei-Yin Temple, he can be considered to have worked hard. Now that the four of us have obtained the sutra, we're already on our way back. You're kicking him out of the sect for such a small matter, isn't that too unreasonable? Zhenhan, do you really think so? Yuan Tongtian's eyes were filled with ridicule as he couldn't help but ask. Zhenkong. Seeing the change in the expressions of Longma Zhenfeng and Confucian Zhenhan, Chunzong hurriedly rubbed his stomach and said, Master is a bit hungry. There's no village or shop here. I don't know where I can find food. Can you find something for Master to eat? Yes, Master. Chunzong immediately agreed. Then, he glanced at Longma Zhenfeng and Confucian Zhenhan and said indifferently, You two protect Master, I'll be back soon. Go, go. Zhenhan waved his hand indifferently. This nirvana is a pure land of Buddhism. How could there be any demon race or Daoist cultivators? That's right, go quickly. If you starve Master, can you bear the responsibility? Longma Zhenfeng echoed. Yuan Tongtian, whose Buddhist name is Zhenkong, slightly raised the corner of his mouth. A demon cloud appeared under his feet and he flew away. After Yuan Tongtian left, Chunzong opened his mouth and said, Amitabha, Zhenfeng, what you're carrying isn't some junk. It's my Buddha's Mahayana Buddhist scripture. This Buddhist scripture is the hope of hundreds of millions of bodhisattvas in hidden immortal continent. It's also the goal of the four of us. I know you want to show your filial piety to me and don't want me to be burdened like this. However, this Mahayana Buddhist scripture is 100 times more important than me. You can obtain more merit by carrying this Buddhist scripture than carrying me. You don't need to compete with Zhenhan and Zhenkong in subduing demons. You only need to protect this Mahayana Buddhist scripture. It's stronger than anything else. That's right. Master, you're right. Zhenhan also said with a faint smile, Zhenfeng, my Chenkuan pouch contains the scriptures of the 100 schools of Confucianism. If you're willing, you can also put it on your back. This merit will definitely be greater. Zhenfeng was originally furious. However, when he saw the sincerity on Chunzong's face, he hurriedly changed his tone and said with a smile, Senior brother, don't joke with little brother. If little brother takes away your merit, won't your military school fall out with my dragon palace? Wouldn't senior brother's trip to Leiyin Temple be in vain? Wouldn't you have seen Mahavairokkana's face in vain? Seeing that Zhenfeng was no longer angry, Zhenhan also felt bored and didn't answer. Instead, she raised her head and looked at the surrounding snowy scenery. Her gaze was attracted by a snowy peak in the distant valley. After Chunzong finished explaining, he didn't care if Zhenfeng listened or not. He looked at the place where Yuan Tongtian disappeared with some concern. Then, he took his staff and walked forward. After walking for a few li, he saw a gurgling stream under the snow at the foot of the mountain. Chunzong licked his dry lips and said, Zhenkong. However, just as he opened his mouth, he smiled bitterly. Standing there, he turned his head and called out to the draconic horse, Zhenfeng, come here. Yes, master. The draconic horse Zhenfeng quickly walked in front of Chunzong and asked, What's the matter? Nothing. Chunzong smiled and walked to the side of the draconic horse. He reached into the oilcloth and took out a purple gold arms bowl. Then, he walked to the side of the stream and bent down to get some water. He placed it by his mouth and drank a few mouthfuls. Ayo, master. The draconic horse Zhenfeng made a fuss and said, No matter what, you should wait for senior brother Zhenkong to come back. If you drink cold water like this, it won't be good for you to have diarrhea. Even if you don't have diarrhea, if you feel uncomfortable anywhere, senior brother Zhenkong will beat us to death. After drinking a few mouthfuls, Chunzong clearly couldn't endure the bone-piercing cold. His face was a little pale and he hurriedly poured the snow water in the purple gold arms bowl. Just as he was about to turn around, he saw the little spirit mouse standing on the mountain peak. At this moment, there was already some snow on the spirit mouse's body. Its body was trembling and its eyes were filled with fear as it stared at the draconic horse. Sigh. Chunzong sighed and put down the purple gold arms bowl. With a slightly reproachful voice, he said, Zhenfeng, you're being naughty again. After saying that, Chunzong carefully crossed the stream and climbed up the mountain peak with difficulty. It was very strenuous for him to carry the spirit mouse out of the ice and snow. However, just as his hand was about to touch the spirit mouse, his foot slipped and his body slipped down. Chunzong naturally lowered his head. The moment he lowered his head, the spirit mouse that was originally terrified suddenly grew in size. A demon race shadow that was dozens of feet in size rushed out from its small body. Things happened too suddenly. Draconic horse Zhen Feng and Confucian cultivator Zhen Han didn't expect that there was a demon race hidden within the spirit beast. Their faces turned pale with fright. Just as they were about to make a move, an extremely familiar voice sounded in the air, "Master, be careful." Immediately, a wave of staff shadows appeared out of thin air and fell on the demon race's shadow. The shadow didn't have time to resist before all the shadows were smashed into the spirit mouse's body. Finally, a pitch-black magic staff appeared in the wave of staff shadows and hit the spirit mouse's head. Pu. With a light sound, the little spirit mouse was smashed into a pile of meat paste by the magic staff. Damn it! Draconic horse Zhen Feng let out a long breath and cursed, another demon beast that was fooled by rumors. If this monk could become immortal after eating it, how could it be your turn? This daddy will be the first to eat it. Chumph. Do you still need to say it? Confucian cultivator Zhen Han coldly snorted, "Of course it's your demon race's great sage. They don't want to see the sutra seeking extreme bliss be completed smoothly. If they don't cause some trouble, how can they be at ease? What does the demon race's great sage have to do with my dragon palace of the four seas? This daddy thinks, it's your Confucian family." Draconic horse Zhen Feng retorted, "They don't want the sutra-seeking extreme bliss to be completed." Zhen Kong. Chun Zong didn't care about the two's battle of words. His face was a bit green as he looked at the sky with an unkind tone and asked, "What are you doing? Why are you starting a massacre again?" At this moment, Yuan Tongtian had already descended from the sky with a tall peach tree on his back. The large peaches on the branches looked very tempting. Hearing Chun Zong's question, Yuan Tongtian didn't care and casually replied, "That's a demon race's phantom beast. He's hiding in the spirit mouse's body and wants to eat you. How is that possible?" Chun Zong looked at the mangled corpse of the spirit mouse and was so angry that his lips trembled. Master was clearly looking at the spirit mouse. "When did the phantom beast appear?" "Monk." Yuan Tongtian sized up Chun Zong and said, "That phantom beast appeared when you lowered your head. You don't have spirit sense and don't know the eye-clearing technique, so naturally you can't see it. If you don't believe me, you can ask your two disciples." Chapter 4275. Ahum. Senior brother Zhenhan, your battle armor looks really mighty. I wonder which blacksmith master of the immortal palace forged it. Draconic horse Zhen Feng coughed and looked at the armor he had been looking at for close to 200 years. He seemed to have discovered something strange and hurriedly asked Zhen Han. Zhen Han said in all seriousness, "Is there a need to ask?" "Naturally, it was forged by the #1 blacksmith master in the world." "Oh, why don't you guess who the #1 blacksmith master in the world is?" "Ayaya, this is not easy to guess." Draconic horse Zhen Feng's face was as if he was thinking hard. Seeing Zhen Feng and Zhen Han talking about him, Zhen Kong smiled coldly and didn't say anything else. However, Chun Zong didn't intend to let him go and said, "Zhen Kong, even if there was a phantom beast, it was enough that you subdued it. There was no need to kill it, right? Moreover, this spirit rat wasn't a phantom beast. What was the point of killing it?" "Monk." Zhen Kong was somewhat impatient and said with a frown, "My strength is limited. It's not possible for me to subdue the phantom beast without injuring you. It's already not bad that I was able to kill it before it could kill you. Zhen Kong, how many times have I told you in the past 200 years? Buddhist disciples should be compassionate and respect life. When we need help, we should always be kind. When we sweep the floor, we're afraid of harming the lives of ants. We should cover the lamp with gauze to protect the moths. Why did you kill it step by step? Although this spirit rat wasn't a human, it was still a life. What was the point of killing this innocent spirit rat and obtaining the General Sutra?" "Monk." Zhen Kong seemed to be used to this, and he didn't get angry. He only said, "The phantom beast has already borrowed the spirit rat's flesh, so killing the phantom beast is equivalent to killing the spirit rat. Moreover, even if I don't touch the spirit rat after killing the phantom beast, it won't live past today." "That's right. Since you knew that the spirit rat would die if the phantom beast died, why didn't you think of a way to subdue the phantom beast?" Chunzong asked in a somewhat forceful manner. It's good to have this phantom beast submit to our Buddhist sect. Monk, I've already beaten and killed those that should be killed. Tell me what to do. Zhen Kong was so angry that he laughed and retorted. You have no idea how many living beings you have killed along the way. Chuanzang sighed. You always say that there will be no next time, but when have you ever taken those words to heart? I just want to ask you, will you do it again next time? Monk. Zhen Kong tossed the peach tree to the ground and calmly replied, Don't ask me about this. Ask the demons and humans who want to take your life. As long as they don't want your life, I definitely won't do anything. But if they want to hurt you, I won't show any mercy. Hearing Zhen Kong's words, compassion appeared in Chunzong's eyes. All the living beings who had died under Zhen Kong's magic wand in the past 200 years appeared in his mind. He could not help but say, since that's the case, you, go, Ayo, master. Seeing that Chunzong was about to chase Zhen Kong away, Zhenhan hurriedly took a few steps forward and plucked a peach from the peach tree. She handed it to Chunzong and smiled. Look, the peach senior brother found is even more juicy than the immortal peaches in the immortal palace. Why don't you try it? Chunzong looked at the juicy peach. In the end, he could not harden his heart and sighed. Forget it. This is the last time. If there is a next time, I don't need to say anything, whatever. Xian Kong did not care at all. He waved his hand as if he was chasing away a fly. Do whatever you want. If it wasn't for master, Zhen Kong immediately stopped and looked at Zhen Feng and Zhen Han. The two of them perked up their ears and waited for him to continue. Thus, Zhen Kong shut his mouth for a moment and continued. Otherwise, who would have the patience to protect you for 200 years? Zhen Feng and Zhen Han could not help but feel slightly disappointed when they saw Zhen Kong being so tight-lipped. They glanced at each other and sneered. They had the same question. Just where did Zhen Kong come from? Just which great saint was behind him? However, it had been more than 200 years and they did not see any clues. In Chunzong's eyes, the so-called sutra seeking extreme bliss was a process of seeking the gospel for the millions of Buddhist people in the hidden immortal continent. However, in Zhen Feng and Zhen Han's eyes, it might not be so. Perhaps, it was just a game to obtain merits and benefits. Therefore, it was very important to have a place in the sutra seeking extreme bliss. In fact, long before Chunzong took down the Buddhist decree in the tidal river temple, the Immortal Palace and Lei-Yin Temple had already discussed this matter. However, this matter did not only involve Buddhism and Confucianism, it also involved the Immortal Palace and various Confucian families and even the demon race. Even when Chunzong began his sutra-seeking extreme bliss journey in the Longevity Town, he did not arrange everything properly. In particular, right after Chunzong left, Xiao Hua had a dispute with Sun Ping who was waiting for him at the Liao River. Although the two left the Longevity Town very quickly, the imprint of the Immortal Palace was unavoidable. Therefore, the matter that was already settled changed again. It was not until more than a year after Chunzong left the Longevity Town that a group of forces suddenly discovered that Chunzong had actually accepted a demon race disciple. This disciple seemed to have been accepted overnight, and it also seemed to have been arranged long ago. However, the Buddhist sect and the Confucian cultivators did not receive any message from the demon race. Seeing that the demon race had already made the first move, the Confucian cultivators and the Buddhist sect did not dare to delay any longer. On one hand, they arranged for an envoy to go to the Thousand Demon Sacred Realm to denounce the great saint of the demon race for not acting according to the agreement. On the other hand, they hurriedly arranged for Chunzong's disciple. Chunzong originally had 3 disciples. One was a demon race disciple, one was a Buddhist, and one was a Confucian cultivator. The Confucian cultivator disciple should be the eldest senior brother. On the hidden immortal continent, he was the first to accept Chunzong as a nominal protector. After that, he went to the Nirvana world and accepted the second Buddhist as a real Buddhist disciple. As for the demon race disciple, he was arranged in the Nirvana world. After being subdued by the Confucian cultivator disciple and the Buddhist sect disciple, he surrendered to the Buddhist sect. Yuan Tongtian's appearance was good. He took the eldest senior brother's position. This Confucian cultivator could only be the second senior brother. The second senior brother was Zhenhan. He was originally the son of the military family and was called Sun Zihon. The status of this Confucian cultivator disciple originally did not belong to the Sun family. Instead, the Immortal Palace gave it to the Dongfang, Shimen, Nangong, and Beiming, 4 big families. However, the status of the eldest senior brother was already gone. The enthusiasm of the 4 big families to compete for the status also disappeared instantly. The 4 big families also did not have any disciples who were willing to be a fire ape's junior brother. Therefore, the status was given to the Sun family again. Under the instruction of the Immortal Palace, the Sun family chose Sun Zihon. At first, Sun Zihon was convinced by Yuan Tongtian. However, in the end, it was because of Yuan Tongtian that he had the opportunity to enter the Nirvana world to seek scriptures. He was still grateful to Yuan Tongtian from the bottom of his heart. Therefore, on the hidden immortal continent, he was courteous to Yuan Tongtian. However, the essence of this kind of courtesy was a kind of pride as a human cultivator. However, in the following few years, Yuan Tongtian's protection of Chuanzong came from the bottom of his heart. He even risked his own life to save Chuanzong. It was very different from what he thought. Zhenhan could not help but feel a little surprised. Moreover, Yuan Tongtian did not care about some of his little tricks at all. Even if he was captured by some Taoist cultivators and wanted to kill him in front of Yuan Tongtian turned a deaf ear to it. Therefore, Zhenhan was completely relieved of Yuan Tongtian. Moreover, this demon clan's Yuan Tongtian was indeed very resourceful. He was much more powerful than Zhenhan. On the hidden immortal continent, almost all the work was done by Yuan Tongtian. He did not need Zhenhan at all. After watching for a while, Zhenhan got used to it. He also adjusted his attitude. Being the second senior brother was fine. Anyway, he was also here to gain merit. However, at this time, strange news came from the Thousand Demons' sacred territory. The demon clan's great sage did not take action at all. The disciples arranged by the demon clan were still waiting to be subdued by the Confucian cultivators and Buddhist sect disciples. Chaos, chaos. This was Zhenhan's mood when he heard the news from the Immortal Palace that day. He was almost impulsive that day. He wanted to ask Yuan Tongtian where he came from. Could it be that he jumped out of a stone? However, as a Confucian disciple, he still had the self-restraint and patience. He did not open his mouth and only watched coldly. The Immortal Palace and the Buddhist sect were shocked when they received the news. They never thought that there would be a fourth force besides the demon race, the Confucian cultivators, and the Buddhist sect that would disrupt their plans. The first thing they thought of was the Tao sect cultivator who called himself the primordial chaos ancestor. However, they did not understand how the Grand Mist ancestor could know about the arrangement of the sutra seeking nirvana. How could he send such a powerful fire ape in advance? What made them even more dumbfounded was that whether it was the Immortal Palace or the Great Thunderclap Temple, they could not find the origin of the fire ape. Even if they used great magical powers, they could not find Yuan Tongtian's origin. They could not find any cause and effect. This fire ape was really as Sun Zihon thought. It was like a stone that fell from the sky. Naturally, the Immortal Palace and the Buddhist sect had the intention to kill Yuan Tongtian. However, they also saw clearly that the one who really protected Chuanzong was Yuan Tongtian. Zhenhan also said clearly that Yuan Tongtian was not interested in the merit of the sutra seeking nirvana. He only cared about Chuanzong's safety. Moreover, the one who accepted Yuan Tongtian was Chuanzong himself. In other words, this was Chuanzong's own choice. It had nothing to do with the Buddhist sect, Confucian cultivators, or the demon clan. Since it was Chuanzong's choice, the Buddhist sect and Confucian cultivators had to consider more for Chuanzong. After all, the heavenly Tao was flawed. Out of 50, one would escape. Perhaps Chuanzong was that one who escaped. In the end, the one who settled this matter was naturally the Mahavairokkana revered Buddha. The Buddha Lord formed a Buddha seal with his hands. The Buddha light penetrated the heaven and earth. After a few days, The Mahavirocana revered Buddha's eyes flashed with a strange expression. He said, "Since he wants to come, let him come." Then, the Mahavirocana revered Buddha did not say anything more. He did not give any explanation at all. Since the Buddha Lord of the Buddhist sect did not object, the Immortal Palace naturally had no reason to object. Yuan Tongtian, the disciple with the Buddha name Zhen Kong, sat in the position of the eldest senior brother. Chapter 4276. Since there was Yuan Tongtian, there would be a demon disciple for the sutra seeking extreme bliss. The demon who was destined to be subdued. His tragic fate would be changed. He would not be beaten by others. He would be subdued by others. However, there was a problem again. The demons were unhappy. This was already agreed upon. How could it be changed just like that? Were they bullying the demons for being inhumane? The Immortal Palace was in a dilemma. There was only so much merit. If there was one more person to share, everyone would have less. The Immortal Palace felt that the Buddhist sect might not be willing. However, to the surprise of the Immortal Palace and the demons, the Buddhist sect made a rare concession in the face of the demons' persistence. The Buddhist sect did not arrange for the Bodhisattva to perform the sutra seeking extreme bliss. There were still 4 of them. However, the Buddhist sect had a condition. This demon disciple could not be a demon from the 1,000-demon sacred realm. The Buddhist sect's reasoning was reasonable. With one less Buddhist disciple, Chunzong's merit would be doubled. The demons already had a disciple. Of course, they could not share any extra merit. Otherwise, wouldn't the demons benefit the most from the sutra seeking extreme bliss? It was unknown if there was something fishy between the Dragon Island and the Buddhist sect, or if fate had really landed on the Dragon Island. On the 3 continents, other than the Immortal Palace, the Thunder Temple, and the Great Sage Temple, there was only the Dragon Island left. The 3rd disciple was given to the Dragon Island. Of course, the Dragon Island could not send a dragon to be Chunzong's disciple. Therefore, the title was given to the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas. There were many dragons in the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas. However, there were not many who could match the status of Sun Zihon. There was no need to mention the princes of the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas. None of them would lower their status to be a disciple of a Buddhist sect's bodhisattva. The Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas could not send out an ordinary dragon general. They had to send a leader of the Dragon Guards. Just as the Immortal Palace was waiting with interest for the Dragon Palace to send out a disciple, Ao Feng appeared. The 10th prince of the Dragon Palace of the East Sea. Everyone knew that the dragon had 9 sons. Each Dragon Palace only had 9 princes. It was impossible to have one more. This was the legacy of the dragons for many years. However, the Dragon Palace of the East Sea had this 10th prince. The Immortal Palace didn't know how the 10th crown prince came about, but from the Dragon Island's Book of Dragons, it was recorded long ago. It was something that happened before the sutra seeking of extreme bliss. In other words, Ao Feng's birth had nothing to do with the sutra seeking of extreme bliss. Since the 10th prince had nothing to do with nirvana scripture seeking, the Immortal Palace immediately understood the reason why the 10th prince revealed his identity. Whether it was the Dragon Island or the East Sea Dragon Palace, one of them must have found the Lei Yin Temple and given Ao Feng the opportunity to appear in the 3 continents, giving him the opportunity to be recognized by the dragon tribe. Therefore, the Immortal Palace didn't pursue the matter further and agreed to let Ao Feng be the last disciple of the sutra seeking extreme bliss. Moreover, the Immortal Palace didn't propose any other conditions. However, when Ao Feng appeared in front of her, Zhen Han's jaw almost dropped to the ground. Where did the Dragon General and the 10th Prince of the Dragon King go? Why is there only one dragon horse? Didn't they say that Chuanzang could only rely on his own strength to travel from Longevity Town to Lei Yin Temple and then back to Longevity Town from Lei Yin Temple? The East Sea Dragon Palace sent a dragon horse over. It could not carry Chuanzang, nor could it fight. How could it split the merit? Could it be that they were planning to sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor? Unfortunately, although this dragon horse Zhen Feng was very lively and often caused trouble, he was very tight-lipped about his origin, and even what had happened. No matter how much Zhenhan asked, he still didn't get an answer. After a long time, Zhenhan also lost his patience. After all, the dragon horse Zhenfeng wasn't the only one who was slacking. Wasn't he also hiding behind Zhenkong and slacking off? It was enough to have Zhenkong as the eldest senior brother in the sutra seeking extreme bliss. Who cares what Zhenfeng thought? However, when the four of them arrived at the Lei-Yin temple and saw the Mahayana scriptures such as the Nirvana Sutra, the Bodhisattva Sutra, and other Mahayana scriptures to Chuanzang, Zhenhan suddenly understood everything. He was instantly filled with admiration for the Lei-Yin temple and the Dragon Palace. Because the Lei-Yin temple had clearly stated that the Mahayana Sutra was the breath of the Buddha Lord. No utensils could taint it. Therefore, the Qiankuan pouch, the Qiankuan bracelet, and the dragon shell couldn't be used. They could only be carried by the dragon clan with the bloodline of the heavenly dragon, his grandmother. What kind of reason was this? This was clearly giving merit to dragon horse Zhenfeng. Unfortunately, this dragon horse Zhenfeng seemed to be a simpleton. He didn't understand anything and only wanted to carry Chuanzang. Zhenhan wished he could knock dragon horse Zhenfeng's head on behalf of the Dragon King of the Eastern Sea Dragon Palace. Did you know that your father had done so much for you? Today, Chuanzang was forced to tell the truth. Looking at dragon horse Zhenfeng's attitude, he didn't seem to care at all. Zhenhan couldn't help but despise him. However, Zhenhan couldn't help but defend Zhenfeng. After all, two people slacking off, it was better than one person being inconspicuous. As for Chuanzang's origin and the relationship between Chuanzang and Zhenkong, even though Zhenhan had followed them for more than 200 years, he still didn't understand. It wasn't only Zhenhan who was confused. Even the immortal palace was shrouded in fog. No one could see the truth. Long before Chuanzang revealed the Buddhist decree, or even when Chuanzang might reveal the Buddhist decree, the immortal palace had already begun to investigate Chuanzang's origin. However, the result left the immortal palace very puzzled. Chuanzang was like a Buddha descending from the heavens, riding on the wooden basin of nirvana. Before the small golden river of the Golden Mountain Temple, Chuanzang's shadow didn't seem to exist in the pure land of ultimate bliss. Since then, Chuanzang's shadow seemed to have covered the entire pure land of ultimate bliss. Moreover, everything was seen clearly by the immortal palace. There weren't any traces of the Mahavairokkana revered Buddha doing anything. Chuanzang appeared out of thin air. Of course, not to mention the immortal palace, even Zhenhan didn't believe that Chuanzang had no relationship with the Mahavairokkana revered Buddha. Otherwise, how could such great merit be given to Chuanzang? However, the experience of the past 200 years told Zhenhan the truth. Chuanzang didn't know the truth behind this pure land of ultimate bliss. This wasn't the final truth. The truth that Zhenhan didn't understand the most was that Chuanzang didn't seem to recognize Zhenkong, who had risked his life to protect her. Not only did Chuanzang treat Zhenkong, Zhenhan, and Zhenfeng equally, he was also very dissatisfied with Zhenkong killing monsters and daoist cultivators. Since a long time ago, he had been talking non-stop about chasing Zhenkong away. Zhenhan was about to go crazy. For the sake of Zhenkong, the Buddhist sect, the immortal palace, and the monster race had engaged in a game. Dragon Island had even joined in. Now that the candidate for the pure land of ultimate bliss had been decided, you actually wanted to change it. Did you think that you had the final say in this pure land of ultimate bliss? Moreover, if Zhenkong was chased away, the heavy responsibility of eliminating monsters and demons would fall on Zhenhan's shoulders. How could Zhenhan be willing? Although the outcome of the pure land of ultimate bliss had been decided, no one could guarantee the process. Anything that one worried about would definitely happen. Didn't you see how the powerful Shen Kong was almost killed by the daoist cultivators he had arranged? Zhenhan couldn't guarantee that the daoist cultivators sent out from the Penglai immortal realm wouldn't have the guts to kill her when they saw her, a Confucian cultivator, before the immortal palace made their move. In particular, a secret that I won't tell you if you're not familiar with him had suddenly spread throughout the 3 continents. It was said that Chuanzang was the reincarnation of a bodhisattva from the Buddhist kingdom. Anyone who could eat a piece of Chuanzang's flesh would gain immortality. Human cultivators were still fine, But the monsters in the 1,000-demon sacred realm couldn't resist this temptation. One after another, they rushed out from their secluded lairs, wanting to realize their beautiful dream of immortality. Although he didn't know where this rumor came from, the effect of this rumor was obvious. Without the immortal palace and the Thunder Temple urging the great sage hall to create a few demons and ghosts, the real calamities came one after another. Although the immortal palace and Thunder Temple's defenses were tight, if a monster like Zhen Kong could become their disciple, then a monster like the Phantom Beast could also get close. If it wasn't for the powerful eldest senior brother Zhen Kong blocking in front of her, Zhenhan might have died several times already. Therefore, even if Zhenhan knew that Zhen Kong looked down on her, she still tried her best to protect Zhen Kong, helping Chuanzang, who only wanted to pursue the truth of Buddhism, to see the reality clearly. Seeing that Chuanzang and Zhen Kong had a falling out again, and Zhen Kong really had the momentum of not daring to do anything, Zhenhan gave Zhenfeng a look and hurriedly said, "Master, please calm down first. This is all my disciple's fault. Eldest senior brother went to look for food for you, but we actually squabbled on the side, causing you to be in danger. Come, quickly try this peach, it's really delicious." "That's right, Master." Dragon Horse Zhenfeng also said, "Eldest senior brother has worked hard and made great contributions. For the past 200 years, haven't we relied on eldest senior brother's abilities to safely reach this place? Seeing that the Western Paradise is about to end, and we have to return to the hidden immortal continent, how can you bear to let eldest senior brother leave? Just now, not to mention eldest senior brother, even my heart was about to jump out. After all, that Phantom Beast had already pounced on Master's head. In just a few breaths, Master will really enter the cycle of reincarnation. Isn't eldest senior brother anxious to save Master? Of course, we Buddhist disciples cannot stain our hands with blood. Eldest senior brother is also in the wrong. Look, even if eldest senior brother doesn't say anything now, he is already regretting it." It was rare for two disobedient disciples to speak up for Zhen Kong, so Chuanzang's heart moved a little. He took the peach that Zhenhan passed to him and took a small bite. A sweet peach juice entered his mouth, and Chuanzang's anger subsided a little. However, when he looked at Zhen Kong again, he saw that Zhen Kong was looking at the sky, seemingly in the direction of the Golden Mountain Temple. He didn't know what Zhen Kong was thinking. Although Zhen Kong didn't say anything, the regret in Zhen Kong's words clearly didn't exist. Chuanzang opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but he had already said enough in the past 200 years. What was the use of him saying anything more? For a moment, his heart felt stifled. He wasn't an idiot. 200 years was enough for him to see some of the truth about the Western Paradise scripture seeking. However, he didn't care. After all, the Mahayana Buddhist scripture he obtained was a real thing. Being able to let the Buddhist sect's Buddhist light illuminate the longevity town was his greatest hope for this trip. However, what was his greatest hope? In this world, there was probably no one who could understand it, not even Mahavairokkana. Chapter 4277. Thinking of this, Chuanzang lost his appetite. He raised his head and looked towards the west. Other than a tall snow mountain, there was only the gloomy sky. Snowflakes were still falling from the red clouds, showing no signs of stopping. The gloomy weather was a day that made people angry. "Let's go." Chuanzang finished the peach in a few bites and carefully buried the peach pit in the snow. "Master, you should eat a few more." Zhenhan chased after him and said, "There are so many peaches. If you don't eat them, wouldn't it be a waste? You guys eat them or leave them for the next meal." Chuanzang didn't even turn his head. He leaned on his staff and walked forward. Zhenhan faintly smiled and nodded, "Yes, Master." After saying that, he waved his hand and the peach tree immediately landed on Dragon Horse Zhenfeng's back. It smashed the tarpaulin, as if the book under the tarpaulin wasn't the scripture. However, Longma Zhenfeng wasn't going to let it go. He jumped and tried to throw the peach tree off while cursing, "Damn it, I'm still the Eastern Sea's 10th prince. How can you throw a peach tree on my back? You clearly have your own Chenkuan bag. Can't you just put it in there? What do you know?" Seeing that Chuanzang had exposed the matter, Zhenhan no longer concealed it and scolded, This is the food for the next meal. If you don't carry it, who will? If I put it on your back, it will be your merit. If I put it in my Chenkuan bag, it will be dog shit. All of you shut up. Zhen Kong was very impatient and scolded. Why aren't you hurrying? Do you believe that I won't kill you with my staff? Damn it, why don't you try and kill me? Even this monk doesn't dare to say such word. Dragon Horse Zhen Feng immediately stopped arguing with the peach tree and turned to Zhen Kong. Why would Zhen Kong care about him? He still carried the magic wand on his shoulder and lazily followed behind Chuanzang. Damned fire ape! Dragon Horse Zhen Feng cursed. Seeing that Zhen Han had also followed, he added, damned Confucian cultivator. Unfortunately, scolding was just scolding. After scolding, Draconic Horse Zhen Feng still raised its hooves and followed behind the three. The snowy mountain looked very close, but it took them more than 10 days to reach it. In these 10 days, it was snowing heavily and there was no sign of stopping. Zhen Han raised his eyes to look at the snowy mountain, then turned back to look at the footprints on the snowy ground. The further the footprints were, the more unclear they were. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Was it worth it to walk such a short distance for more than 10 days? In the past, as long as he moved his body, the great snow mountain would have already been under his feet. But today, he actually walked over with his feet. However, when Zhen Han turned his head around, he saw that there was no longer a smooth path ahead. There was only a small path leading to the great snow mountain. Zhen Han felt bitter in his heart. How could he not know that this was another test? In his heart, he was already cursing, Mother f***, which shameless baldy from the Buddhist sect gave this test. This great snow mountain. Could it be that this daddy has to climb up step by step? Zhen Han could only curse in his heart. It was impossible for him to not climb up because the sutra-seeking path in Nirvana wasn't purely about seeking Mahayana Buddhist scriptures. The Immortal Palace also arranged for Zhen Han to spread Confucian teachings in the Nirvana world. Everywhere they went, Chun Feng would preach Buddhism and discuss with the local Buddhas. As for Zhen Han, he would take out the Confucian scrolls that he had already prepared and give them to the local villagers. Especially those young children, Zhen Han would also tell them some stories about Confucian teachings. As for the effect of these scrolls and Confucian teachings, Zhen Han didn't know. Especially in many places in the Nirvana world, Buddhism was highly respected. Very few people were interested in Zhen Han's Confucian scrolls. However, Zhen Han still had to brace himself and do this seemingly useless thing. It was also at this time that Zhen Han especially admired the Buddhas who preached Buddhism in the Immortal Town and other places hundreds of years ago. Your grandmother. Sure enough, there was no need for Zhen Han to say a word. That dragon horse Zhen Feng flew into a rage. Monk, could it be that you want me to drag these bullshit things up the great snow mountain? Chun Zong raised his head and narrowed his eyes as he looked at the great snow mountain that was almost unreachable. Then, he looked at the snowfield with no way out. There was no fear in his mind. In 200 years, the entire Nirvana world had been trampled under his feet. Would he still care about this small great snow mountain? He simply turned a deaf ear to Zhen Feng's roar. He lifted his foot and firmly stepped on the path that was almost inaudible. I say, monk, you really want to go up? Dragon Horse Zhen Feng was silly. Although he complained, how could he not go up with his strength? He was just afraid of being tired and lazy. But Chun Zong was different. He was very clear that Chun Zong didn't have a trace of psychokinesis and didn't know any Buddhist techniques. If he wanted to climb up the great snow mountain, it would be 10,000 times more dangerous than him. Master naturally wants to go up. Chun Zong didn't turn his head and replied as if it was a matter of course. If you don't want to go up, then you don't have to. Damn it. Dragon Horse Zhen Feng wanted to say something, but when he saw Zhen Feng follow Chun Zong and Zhen Han hurriedly walk past him, leaving behind a mysterious smile, what else could he say? He could only mutter, I don't believe that this great snow mountain can't kill a monk like you. Then, he carried the Buddhist scriptures and stepped onto the path with difficulty. Boom! Just as the four of them stepped onto the path, a thunderclap sounded from the western sky, shaking the four of them to raise their heads. High up in the sky, Tiny lightning threads were like hundreds of millions of dragons cruising in the sky. In the center of the lightning threads, there was an abnormal twisting vortex that was either elongated or extended. It even condensed into a strange black hole. In just a few breaths of time, the lightning threads expanded again and rushed towards the Great Snow Mountain. It was like a thunderstorm that covered the entire sky. At the same time, as the thunderstorm roared, the twisting vortex suddenly overflowed like bubbles. A few, dozens, hundreds, and finally tens of thousands of vortexes, spinning rapidly in the thunderstorm. These vortexes were of different sizes and depths, and even their twisting was different. Disciple, what's going on? Chunzong was surprised and turned to ask Zhen Kong naturally. How would I know? A hint of surprise flashed in Zhen Kong's eyes, and he suddenly felt excited. He didn't feel this excited even when he kowtowed to Mahavairokkana in the Thunder Temple. However, he still replied coldly, even if the great saint of the demon clan came, you would still have to walk up the Great Snow Mountain step by step. Millimeter. Chunzong felt disappointed for no reason and was about to walk up the mountain. However, at this moment, at the peak of the Great Snow Mountain, a whimpering sound was also heard. Then, in the sky above the Great Snow Mountain, layers of strange green light appeared and rushed into the void like an umbrella. Then, the lightning that appeared seemed like a dragon that smelled blood, crossing the space and pouncing on the green light. When the thunderbolts fell into the green light, the thunderbolts that filled the sky suddenly disappeared. Layers of golden light sparkled like the setting sun shining on the surface of the water. As the golden light gradually grew larger, it looked like dragon scales that covered the sky. Everyone, look! Lord Dragon God has descended. Dragon Horse Zhen Feng walked at the back and couldn't help but exclaim loudly, afraid that Zhenhan couldn't hear him. However, before he could finish speaking, Namo Mettria Buddha, Namo Amitabha Buddha, Namo Dipankara Buddha. The chanting of 10,000 Buddhas appeared again, and the dragon scales turned into a bright Buddhist light. Not only did it illuminate the sky, but it also illuminated the Great Snow Mountain and the snowy plains. At the end of the Buddhist light, countless jade talismans appeared. Within the jade talismans, celestial maidens, celestial flowers, celestial dragons, and various Buddhist fruits appeared one after another. An indescribable Buddhist aura slowly covered the entire Great Snow Mountain. Namo Amitabha Buddha. Seeing this strange scene, the surprise in Chunzong's eyes became even more intense. He chanted a Buddhist mantra and knelt down, kowtowing toward the west. Damn it! Zhenhan narrowed his eyes and looked at this strange scene as if he was admiring the scenery. However, he felt disdain in his heart. What is the Thunder Temple planning? They haven't even reached the Longevity Town, so why did they come with such a big formation? Could it be that this Great Snow Mountain has some secret that I, a Confucian cultivator, don't know? Monk, what's going on? Long Ma Zhen Feng was extremely disappointed and shouted, how did my Lord Dragon God become a Buddhist kingdom? Not to mention the four of them being inexplicably surprised, even a bodhisattva sitting cross-legged on a six-tusked white elephant in a dilapidated small temple halfway up the Great Snow Mountain also had a look of surprise on his face. This bodhisattva was wearing a 5 Buddha golden crown and a kasaya. His left hand was holding a scepter and his expression was solemn. Wasn't he Samantabhadra Bodhisattva? However, when the dragon scales in the sky turned into Buddhist light, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's face was filled with ecstasy. He almost couldn't help but mutter to himself, Namo Mettria Buddha, I really didn't expect that disciple's guess was actually true. Buddha Lord really came to this world. When disciple saw Buddha Lord's body that day, I was still hesitating. Not only did Buddha Lord's cultivation method change, he also didn't have any impression of his previous life. Even Mahavairokkana was unable to see through Buddha Lord's origin and was unable to confirm his identity. If disciple wasn't merciful enough to see Buddha Lord's physical appearance, how could disciple recognize Buddha Lord's current physical body? Now, it seems that Buddha Lord must have encountered a great problem during his reincarnation, so he had no choice but to erase his own reincarnation imprint. Fortunately, disciple was arranged by Buddha Lord to come to this world and found the little exquisite temple of Tantric Buddhism that was built tens of thousands of years ago in Lei Yin Temple. Disciple knew that this was the key to Buddha Lord's awakening, so I came here first. Buddha Lord's current physical body hasn't even stepped into the little exquisite temple, yet he was able to trigger the Buddhist kingdom's vision. This little exquisite temple must be where Buddha Lord's physical body is awakening. Namo Maitreya Buddha, disciple has gone through untold hardships to welcome the awakening of the future Buddha Lord's reincarnation. Disciple's great wish can finally be realized. Chapter 4278. After Samantabhadra Bodhisattva finished speaking, he put his palms together and bowed in the direction of Lei Yin Temple. He floated down from the six-tusked white elephant and patted the white elephant. The white elephant flew into the sky and concealed itself. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva landed in front of the main hall of Xiao Linglong Temple. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva released his Buddhist awareness and scanned the surroundings of Xiao Linglong Temple. After pondering for a moment, he walked to the main hall and sat down cross-legged. He faced the statue of Maitreya Buddha and lowered his head to recite scriptures. Not long after, 2 strands of Yuan Shen and a ray of clear light swept over. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva didn't even open his eyes and didn't stop reciting the scriptures. He was very clear that this was the Yuan Shen of Zhenkong and the others. However, with the strength of Zhenkong and the others, it was impossible for them to detect the existence of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. After an unknown period of time, he heard a series of dull knocks on the door. Chuanzang's voice also sounded. Is there a senior brother here? Disciple is Chuanzang of Nirvana Sutra seeking. I'm passing by today and it's already late. I hope senior brother can stay here for the night. Monk. Zhenkong's voice sounded at an untimely time. I already told you, this is a deserted temple. There's no one here. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva floated out of the main hall. His body flashed with Buddhist light and turned into an old monk. This old monk wore a strange orange-red outfit and a red hat that looked like a coxcomb. The old monk that Samantabhadra Bodhisattva transformed into also had dark red skin and a face full of wrinkles. Under a pair of snow-white eyebrows, his squinted eyes seemed to be submerged in the wrinkles of time. This old monk was actually very similar to what Xiao Hua had seen in the past. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva stood in front of the main hall and waved his hand unhurriedly. The broom that had been thrown next to the water tank in the corner for hundreds of years fell into his hand. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva looked at the temple gate with interest and then looked up at the sky. At this time, the tens of thousands of vortexes in the sky had exploded. Countless Buddha's light had shrouded the area for tens of thousands of miles. Layers of Buddha's light overlapped, and no one could tell how many layers there were. And within this Buddhist light, countless Buddhist kingdoms began to gradually form. Strands of faith power began to overflow within these Buddhist kingdoms. However, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was a little puzzled. Within the layers of Buddha's light, there was a similar vortex. These vortexes overlapped with the Buddha's light. The layers of vortexes were hidden behind the Buddha's light and looked rather strange. However, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva didn't have time to look at it carefully. The door of the Xiao Linglong Temple was once again pushed open. Hey! Zhenkong's surprised voice rang out. Why is there an old monk here? Could he be a demon? Following Zhenkong's words, he strode past Chunzang and stood in front of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. He waved his magic wand in the air and looked at Samantabhadra Bodhisattva vigilantly. Bullshit. What demon? Draconic horse Zhenfeng's voice rang out. In your eyes, there are only 2 types of creatures in this world. One type won't harm a monk, and the other type will harm a monk. Do you think an old monk can harm a monk? Samantabhadra Bodhisattva didn't care about the quarrel between the two. He only held a broom and swept the snow on the ground. The snow had already been swept away when he entered the Xiao Linglong Temple. Now, he only swept away a thin layer of snow. Zhenkong's eyes glowed with golden light. He took a closer look but couldn't see anything. However, just as he was about to raise his magic wand, his eyes suddenly lit up as if he had seen something. The corners of his mouth curled up into a mocking smile. Then, he placed the magic wand on his shoulder and moved to the side. Elder. Seeing Zhenkong move aside, Chunzong quickly walked over and put his palms together. Disciple Chunzong, Chunzong wanted to greet him, but Samantabhadra Bodhisattva didn't seem to see him. He turned around and swept his gaze elsewhere. Chunzong helplessly walked forward and grabbed the broom. He smiled and said, "Old master, you're old. Rest on the side. As for the rest, disciple will help you sweep." "Oh, little monk." Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's body trembled. He looked up at Chunzong and said, "All right, since you want to sweep, then sweep more." Samantabhadra Bodhisattva let go of the broom and looked at Zhen Kong. His squinted eyes suddenly widened. He pointed at Xian Kong in shock and shouted, "Demon, demon, hehe, if I'm a demon, then what are you?" Although Zhen Kong saw something, he still didn't show any respect. He rudely retorted, "Ah, he's a demon too?" Draconic horse Zhen Feng was shocked and hurriedly took a few steps back. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's face turned pale. He pulled on Chunzong's sleeve and shouted, "What? Little monk, your horse can speak human language? It's a demon too?" Chunzong held the broom with one hand and supported the old monk with the other. He replied with a slightly loud voice, "Old master, don't be afraid. This draconic horse is this poor monk's disciple. Although it has the appearance of a draconic horse, it's actually a dragon. It's of the same bloodline as my Buddhist sect's guardian heavenly dragon, monk." Draconic horse Zhen Feng was unhappy and shouted, "How can your Buddhist sect's heavenly dragon be compared to my Dragon Island's bloodline? Namo Amitabha." The old monk was still afraid. His withered vine-like hand tightly held onto Chunzong and shouted, "Since it's a dragon, then it's a demon. I remember that when I was young, my house was next to a river. Dragons would often appear there. Every year, they would eat little boy, that old man." Draconic horse Zhen Feng was even more unhappy. He almost jumped up and shouted, "That's a flood dragon. To put it bluntly, it's a python spirit. How can it be compared to this old man? Namo Amitabha." The old monk's face turned pale. He hid beside Chunzong and secretly looked at Draconic horse Zhen Feng and said, "You still say that he's your disciple? Look at him, he doesn't even call you master. How can he be your disciple? Such a disciple, what do you want him for? Damn it." Draconic horse Zhen Feng angrily said, "What does it have to do with you whether I call you master or not? Zhen Feng." Chunzong finally couldn't bear it and shouted, "Go outside the temple and wait. Don't scare this old man." Draconic horse Zhen Feng smiled and said, "If master doesn't worry about this disciple carrying the scripture outside, then this disciple will go. Master, you don't need to worry about this." Zhen Han, who had been watching from the side for a long time, immediately walked over and said with a smile, "This disciple will take the scripture from junior brother's back and then let senior brother kick him down the mountain." Zhen Han. Draconic horse Zhen Feng was somewhat flustered. "You dare? I'll give you 10 times the courage. Why wouldn't I dare?" Zhen Han replied with interest, "You should ask senior brother this question." After saying this, Zhen Han half-jokingly pulled Draconic horse Zhen Feng towards a corner of the small temple, away from the old monk. As for Zhen Kong, he had already jumped onto the wall of the small temple. He raised his eyes and looked at the Buddhist light and rosy clouds in the sky. He listened to the inexplicable rumbling sounds with an expectant look on his face. No one knew what he was thinking. "Hehe, I've let this old man see a joke." Chunzong smiled and helped the old monk to the side of the main hall. He used his kasaya to clean the dust on the steps and invited the old monk to sit down. He said, "These disciples of this poor monk are naughty and often inadvertently violate the precepts. This poor monk usually doesn't teach them well. This is all this poor monk's fault. However, these disciples of this poor monk have good hearts. The secular world once said that if one doesn't teach well, it's the father's fault. If one doesn't teach strictly, the teacher will be lazy. You are indeed not a qualified teacher." The old monk sat down, his eyes still narrowed as he indifferently replied. Chunzong could only bitterly smile. After the old monk sat down, he took a broom and began to sweep the floor of the exquisite temple. It was just like the day when Xiao Hua came to the exquisite temple. Before the Buddhist light descended, there was heavy snow. No matter how he swept, he couldn't catch up with the falling snow. After the Buddhist light descended, The dark clouds had already been dispersed and the snowflakes had already stopped fluttering. Perhaps there were still some snowflakes that were unwilling to be left out in the air to join in the fun. However, it was much easier for Chunzong to sweep. In just half a meal's time, Chunzong had already cleaned the entire courtyard. After he gathered all the snow at the foot of the wall, he very naturally picked up the wooden cover of the water jar at the foot of the wall as if he wanted to drink some water. However, when he picked up the wooden cover, the water jar was empty. There wasn't a single drop of water. Chunzong couldn't help but be stunned. At this moment, a bitter smile appeared on the face of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. He could casually sweep the snow in the courtyard and make it look like someone regularly cleaned the courtyard. However, he didn't drink water. Why would he think of putting water in the water jar? Zhenkong. Chunzong was only stunned for a moment before he raised his head and shouted, "Go and help this old man get some water. On such a snowy day, I'm afraid it's not convenient for him to get water." "Yes, master." Zhenkong didn't hesitate at all and immediately answered. At this moment, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva smiled and said, "The water of the mortal world can only quench the thirst of the stomach. How can the thirst of the Surya be quenched?" Chunzong smiled and said, "Buddha's words are naturally the rain of the Surya. As long as one listens to Buddha's mantra at all times, the Surya will naturally not be thirsty." Namu Metriya. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva put his palms together and bowed respectfully. "You're right. However, what if the Surya doesn't know how to drink water and listen? What should we do?" "Enlighten." Chunzong didn't hesitate. "Enlighten and enlighten. Follow thousands of miles without fear. Take one step at a time and you'll naturally see Buddha's true appearance." "All right, please." Samantabhadra Bodhisattva took a deep breath and stepped aside. He raised his hand and gestured, "Please take the first step to see Buddha." Chapter 4279. As Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Nanwu stepped aside, the previously closed main hall of the exquisite temple suddenly opened. Although the light of Buddha filled the sky and enveloped the entire Great Snow Mountain, it was pitch black inside the main hall. Nothing could be seen, let alone the true appearance of the Buddha Lord. "Ah!" Seeing that the old monk had suddenly regained consciousness and was not as muddle-headed as before, Chun Qing was stunned. He looked at the open door of the main hall with hesitation, not daring to act rashly. However, he only took a glance, and a sense of mission, belonging, and familiarity that he hadn't felt for a long time came from the pitch-black main hall. Something inexplicable struck his heart and lungs, striking his memories. It was as if everything he pursued was inside, as if the true face of Buddha was hidden in the darkness. Chuanzang couldn't help but take a step forward. "Master!" Zhenkong panicked when he saw this. He hurriedly jumped down from the high wall and blocked Chuanzang's path. Although he could see the true face of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, the main hall was covered by a layer of extremely mysterious things. His primary consciousness couldn't penetrate it, and his clear vision couldn't see it either. How could he let Chuanzang enter without worry? Even if it was Samantabhadra Bodhisattva who let Chuanzang in, Chuanzang stopped when he heard this. He looked at the old monk and then at Zhenkong and asked, "What's wrong? Isn't it just a main hall? What's the danger?" Zhenkong said solemnly, "Master, although it's a main hall, I'm still worried. With my ability, I can't see what's inside. If you agree, can I go in and take a look?" "All right." Chuanzang didn't hesitate and nodded in agreement. Zhenkong glanced at Samantabhadra Bodhisattva and ignored the displeasure on Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's face. He held the magic wand and strode into the main hall. It was very strange. Zhenkong was able to easily enter the main hall that his yuan will couldn't penetrate. The main hall was the main hall, and the Buddha statue was the Buddha statue. There was nothing strange about it. Even if Zhenkong released his yuan will and clear eyes technique, he still couldn't see anything strange. "Master, please come in." Zhenkong had no choice but to wait inside and call out, "Can I?" Chuanzang's heart suddenly jumped. He felt as if something extremely important was about to appear in front of him. Moreover, he also felt that the appearance of this thing would affect his life. Everything would change because of this. He had no choice but to ask Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of the Namo pilgrimage again. Namo Maitreya. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva put away his displeasure and raised his hand with a smile. Of course. Furthermore, I want to accompany you. Chuanzang was already a little absent-minded. He did not seem to hear Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's eye. As Chuanzang walked closer, the Buddhist light in the sky became brighter and more transparent. The Buddhist kingdom in the Buddhist light also became clearer. The faint chanting of the 10,000 Buddhas seemed to be right beside him. At this time, let alone Zhenhan, even Dragon Horse Zhenfeng couldn't help but calm down. He raised his head and looked at the sky uneasily. Lowering his voice, he asked, "Second senior brother, what's going on? Could it be that this monk really has some background?" "Nonsense." Zhenhan couldn't help but scold. If he doesn't have any background, how could he go to Lei-Yin Temple to obtain scriptures? Do you think that there are millions of Buddhas in Western Paradise and everyone can go there to obtain scriptures? Didn't you see many Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in Lei-Yin Temple? This monk might be one of the Bodhisattvas. Damn it. Dragon Horse Zhenfeng muttered. Then didn't I offend this monk? Offend the future Bodhisattva? Hehe, so what if you offend him? Zhenhan laughed. As long as you don't get kicked out by him, as long as you reach Longevity Town. Oh, it seems that we don't have to wait that long. As long as Master achieves enlightenment today, our Master and disciple status will be confirmed. If he wants to say anything or do anything, it won't be that easy. What can he do to me? Dragon Horse Zhenfeng was a little scared. Actually, thinking about it now, Master is very good to me. I always make him angry, but he never gets angry. T. Zhenhan glared at him and transmitted her voice. Do you think he's not angry? But what's the use of him being angry? He said that he wants to kick you out, but can he kick you out? I'm afraid that the only person he can kick out is eldest senior brother. However, he can't bear to kick out eldest senior brother. After all, in these 200 years, it was eldest senior brother who worked hard. If he kicks eldest senior brother out, he might not even be able to keep his life. Damn it, how do you know so much? Dragon Horse Zhenfeng said enviously. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? Why should I tell you? Zhenhan stole a glance at the sky above his head. The gathered Buddha light seemed to have condensed into a huge Buddha statue. Between the lines of the Buddha statue, there was a river of faith flashing. He was even more shocked and replied absent-mindedly. You're my second senior brother. Dragon Horse Zhenfeng shouted anxiously. If you don't tell me, who will? Zhenhan became even more anxious and said, Damn it, you don't want to live anymore? Why are you so loud? Aren't you afraid of being heard by others? Don't you know how to transmit sound? Dragon Horse Zhenfeng didn't dare to say more and only replied with a single word. Zhenhan was very satisfied with Zhenfeng's attitude and said with a smile, If you treat this monk as your master, then maybe I'll treat you as my junior brother. Why should this monk be my master? Dragon Horse Zhenfeng was the first to speak, but he immediately came back to his senses and shouted back. Because of that. Zhenhan pointed at the Buddha statue in the sky and didn't say anything else. What is that? Dragon Horse Zhenfeng looked at the dazzling scene in the sky. His fist-sized eyes reflected the Buddha light and the grayish-white color of the overlapping Buddha light. At this time, Chunzong had already walked to the front of the hall and was about to step over the threshold. Namo Maitreya Buddha, Namo Maitreya Buddha. The whole hall suddenly lit up and Buddhist chants resounded. Chuanzang was shocked. He looked into the hall and saw that it was empty. The golden body of Maitreya Buddha was lying there casually. This golden body was unusually fat, with its chest exposed. It had a very warm smile on its face. In its left hand was a small bag, and in its right hand was a thick prayer bead. The Buddha's light was emitted from the golden body, but the sound of chanting came from the void. This Buddha light not only illuminated Jin Kong, who was standing at the side of the hall, but also illuminated the incense table and the two thick red candles on it. Namo Maitreya Buddha. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha had already entered the hall and stood respectfully beside the incense table. As he chanted, he lit up the red candles. At the same time, incense appeared on the fist-sized incense burner in the middle of the red candles. As the red bricks were lit, the incense also burned. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha? Chunzong was shocked and hurriedly stepped into the hall. Why is Bodhisattva here? Forgive this disciple's poor eyesight, Bodhisattva, please forgive this disciple. As he spoke, Chunzong hurriedly bowed. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha didn't dare to let Chunzong bow. He hurriedly put his palms together and Chunzong immediately couldn't bow. He rushed to say, Disciple Samantabhadra has come to the Western Paradise to welcome Namo Maitreya Buddha's return. What? Namo Maitreya Buddha? Chunzong was stunned and said in surprise, Bodhisattva isn't joking with disciple, right? Disciple. Disciple is the reincarnation of Namo Maitreya Buddha? That's right. Buddha Lord is naturally the reincarnation of Namo Maitreya Buddha in this life. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha nodded and said, Disciple spent 2 rounds of the golden body and sacrificed 1,000,000 merit points to know that Buddha Lord had come to the Western Paradise in this life. Disciple then spent hundreds of years to find the Tantra of Shaolinglinglong Temple in the Great Snow Mountain. At the same time, Buddha Lord used his physical body to make a great wish that mortals couldn't fulfill. He did a good deed of seeking scriptures in the Western Paradise. Buddha Lord, look at the Great Snow Mountain now. The Buddha light is shining and the faith is like a river. It has become the center of attention of the entire Western Paradise. Even Mahavairokkana world-honored Buddha and Dipankara world-honored Buddha can't send their Buddha thoughts here. If Buddha Lord isn't Namo Maitreya Buddha, then who is? As Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha's words, the entire hall suddenly disappeared. The strange phenomenon in the sky fell into Chunzong's eyes. Chunzong couldn't help but put his palms together and said, Namo Amitabha. Disciple always felt that this hall was so familiar. So that's how it is. As Chunzong said that, he looked at the golden body of Namo Maitreya Buddha in the hall again. A true sense of familiarity rose from the bottom of his heart. He couldn't help but smile. As he smiled, the entire hall immediately surged with Buddhist lotuses and heavenly flowers fell from the sky. Countless fairies appeared in the void and chanted the Buddha Lord's hymns. However, that was all. After the grand scene, there were no other strange phenomena. Even the Buddha light above his head was still slowly gathering and didn't really fall. Chunzong didn't understand. He turned to look at Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha was also a little embarrassed. He put his palms together and said, Buddha Lord, please wait a moment. At this time, the mud wall of the hall had disappeared. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha could easily see the situation in the left and right side halls. He scanned with his Buddha consciousness and was shocked. At this moment, a soft cracking sound rang out. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha was stunned. He turned to look at the source of the sound and saw that the golden body of Namo Maitreya Buddha had strangely cracked open like a centipede. Boom! Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Maitreya Buddha's mind went blank. The cracking sound was like thunder in his ears. He muttered in disbelief, the Buddha position has changed hands. No! Impossible! Chapter 4280. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva understood that although there were thousands of Buddhas in Lei-Yin Temple, there were not many with Buddhist positions. Just like how there were only 3,000 great Taos, cultivators were like carps crossing the river. Only a few could obtain great Taos. The Buddhism sect emphasized the 9 transformations golden body. The 9 transformations cultivation method did not necessarily require one to reincarnate. However, when one was forced to reincarnate, a powerful arhat would definitely have meticulous arrangements. No mistakes would be allowed. The Buddha Lords of Buddhism sect were led by Dipankara Buddha World-Honored Venerable, Mahavairokkana World-Honored Venerable, and Maitreya Buddha World-Honored Venerable. The cultivation of these 3 Buddha Lords was the biggest mystery of Buddhism sect. Even the reincarnations of the sons of Buddhas with great supernatural powers had arrangements. How could their reincarnations not have careful arrangements? In the whole world, who could break their cultivation and snatch the Buddha position from under their supernatural powers? In the eyes of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, this was simply impossible. This had never happened since the establishment of the Buddhist sect. But now, the golden body of Namo Danglai Maitreya had cracked, and Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, who thought it was the reincarnation of Namo Danglai Maitreya, stood in front of the golden body without any change. Wasn't this the usual Buddha position change? Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo subcontinent was extremely surprised. A Buddhist position change? Chuanzang was also shocked when he heard Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's words. He seemed to have thought of something and his face turned pale. A Buddhist position change? Zhen Kong, on the other hand, watched all of this with great interest as he laughed inwardly. Interesting, interesting, boom. Just as Samantabhadra Bodhisattva and Chuanzang's expressions changed, a loud beast roar came from the sky. Zhen Kong was stunned. When he raised his head to look, he saw a flood of 5-colored starlight charging towards him from the Buddhist light that filled the sky. The Buddhist light that had completely covered the snowy mountain was instantly torn apart by the starlight. Once the crack appeared, the starlight immediately turned into a halo and rushed in all directions. Behind the starlight, the overlapping dark clouds were like huge mountains piled up together. They pushed over from the sky and covered the sky above the great snow mountain in the blink of an eye. From the dark clouds, a vast vital thought was like a cold stone. It brushed past the space and produced a clanging sound as it fell toward the exquisite temple. A great demon? Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was shocked when he saw the vital thought. He shouted, "Strange things happen every year. Why are there so many of them this year? Can a mere great demon disperse the Buddhist light of my Namo Maitreya Buddha? How can a great demon disperse the Buddhist light that even Vairocana Buddha revered one not touch?" Roar! Before Samantabhadra Bodhisattva could do anything, the 6-tusked white elephant that was originally hidden in the void roared and revealed itself. The white elephant was surrounded by Buddhist light and layers of golden swastika runes appeared on the elephant's body. The white elephant first opened its mouth and shot out Buddhist light mixed with specks of golden light. It shot toward the dark clouds like a fountain. Then, the white elephant waved its long trunk and landed on the dark clouds where the vital thought swept out. Buzz buzz. When the white elephant's trunk landed in the air, it immediately turned into a white python-like Dharma image. Not only did it seal the space within dozens of miles, but the space also exploded under the heavy pressure. Tiny spatial cracks faintly appeared. Boom! The Buddhist light and golden light first collided with the dark clouds. The dark clouds were as solid as a mountain. Amidst a loud boom, the Buddhist light and golden light only created huge cracks in the dark clouds. They could not penetrate it at all. At this moment, the white elephant's trunk collided with the vital thought again. Clang! Unexpectedly, there was a metallic sound. Multicolored light and shadow suddenly appeared. Even though the ice-cold primordial intent was defeated, the white elephant's tusks were also sent flying. There were traces of blood on the tusks that were lacerated and lacerated. Roar! Damn it! At this moment, Zhen Kong had already flown out with a demonic staff in his hand. He roared and pounced forward. The flames around his body seemed to want to burn the sky. Second senior brother. In the corner of the exquisite temple, Dragon Horse Zhen Feng saw the scene in the sky and his legs trembled. Seeing Zhen Kong jump into the air, he couldn't help but exclaim, "Is senior brother crazy? The one who came is not an ordinary demon. He has not even shown himself and has already defeated Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's white elephant. No matter how powerful senior brother is, he can't be a match for him. If he goes up, if he doesn't go up, he will be courting death for nothing." "Ph, what do you know?" Zhenhan smiled coldly. Xiaoling Long Temple still has Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo. With him here, even if a great demon saint comes, what can he do? Eldest senior brother was the smartest one. Now that he had gone up, he was showing off to Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. How could Bodhisattva hurt him? "Granny, so that's how it is. I also want to go and snatch the merit." Longma Zhenfeng angrily said, This is an opportunity to perform in front of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. I can't let eldest senior brother snatch it away. Bulsh *t. Junhan cursed in a low voice again. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo knows how you and I usually behave. What's the point of showing off now? You and I had better hide here and wait patiently for Master to attain Buddhahood so that we can bask in his glory. Jun Kong naturally wasn't as despicable as Junhan thought. He just didn't want to put Chuanzang in danger. Although he knew that he wasn't a match for the one who came, he still urged his body and rushed forward. Unfortunately, before he could fall, he saw a black cloud falling from the sky and instantly landing in front of the six-tusked white elephant. The six-tusked white elephant was shocked and quickly retreated. At the same time, the six tusks suddenly left its body and turned into flying swords that pierced the black cloud. Clang, clang, clang. A series of sounds rang out as the white tusks rushed into the black cloud. However, they only managed to disperse the dark cloud a little. The five-colored light within the dark cloud reappeared and blocked the white tusk. The white tusks of the white tusks disappeared in the void. The dark cloud continued to rush towards the exquisite temple. A five-colored halo that seemed to be on the same side as the screen fell with a whoosh and smashed towards the six-tusked white elephant. Although the six-tusked white elephant had already retreated, the five-colored halo had already descended while its body was still in the air. How dare you? Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Daxing frowned. An 8th-rank Buddhist lotus appeared under his feet to support him. He waved the jade scepter in his hand and a huge lotus appeared out of thin air, blocking the six-tusked white elephant. When the five-colored halo saw that Lianhe had blocked it, it suddenly sped up and landed on the six-tusked white elephant's shadow. Awoo! The six-tusked white elephant let out a blood-curdling screech. All of its shadows were split into 6 pieces, and its body was already drenched in blood. Clang! At this time, the huge lotus rushed into the five-colored halo. In the sound of metal clanging, the five-colored halo was shattered. At the same time, the lotus turned into specks of Buddhist light and fell into the air. Ivildor, eat this grandpa's staff. Before the specks of Buddhist light fell, a fiery figure rushed out from the shattered Buddhist light. A voice that could almost roar through the heavens and earth sounded. Jun Kong held the devil wand in his hand and rushed towards the dark cloud. Gaga! A hoarse voice came from the dark cloud. Are you the fire ape that protects the human race? Jun Kong naturally didn't say anything. His devil wand fell into the dark cloud like a thunderbolt. With a boom, the five-colored halo was swung out from the dark cloud like a screen. However, this time, it didn't land on Jun Kong. Instead, it landed on the devil wand. Boom! With a loud sound, Jun Kong's arms went numb and the web between his thumb and forefinger became hot. He couldn't hold on to the devil wand anymore. Woo! It flew into the air. Before Jun Kong could move his body to grab the devil wand, the five-colored halo rose into the sky. Whoosh! The halo flashed and the devil wand was actually shattered into 6 pieces. Damn it, damn it, damn it. When Jun Kong saw that the magic wand was destroyed, his eyes immediately turned blood red. He cursed angrily and flames flickered around his body. His ape body involuntarily swelled up. In just a short moment, a 300-meter tall fire ape appeared in the air. Damn it! This fire ape is indeed powerful. Longma Feng was somewhat flabbergasted. Previously, he only had the strength of a 4th-grade elemental energy. Now, I'm afraid that he has reached the 5th grade. So what if he's at the 5th grade? Junhan understood and rejoiced in Jun Kong's misfortune. The six-tusked white elephant has the strength of a 6th-grade elemental energy. Even the six-tusked white elephant was defeated. How could this monkey be a match for it? If Samantabhadra Bodhisattva wasn't here, today would be the day of his death. Indeed, just as Junhan said, the moment the fire ape's avatar appeared, a voice came from the black cloud. Is this the famous fire ape's avatar? Did my great-grandson die under this Dharmakaya? What a joke! How could such a small trick hurt my good grandson? As the voice spoke, a 5-colored light rushed out from the black cloud. However, this time, the light turned into a wave and fell from the sky. Swish. Under the light, Zhen Kong didn't dodge at all. Not only were the flames around his body extinguished, his body was also riddled with holes and rapidly returned to its original form. Damn it. Zhen Kong seemed to rather die than submit. He forcefully struggled and opened his mouth, wanting to spit out the demon core. Enough. A sneer came from the black cloud. You dare to make a fool of yourself in front of me with your insignificant methods? If not for the fact that you're just a puppet, I would have killed you long ago. As the voice spoke, countless black strands appeared in the air around Zhen Kong. They were like millions of little snakes that imprisoned Zhen Kong's body. Namo Metria. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Metria chanted and appeared beside Zhen Kong. With a wave of his jade scepter, Buddhist light fell into the air like swords and dispelled the countless black thread. Then, the Buddhist light swept Zhen Kong away. However, at this moment, another wild laughter came from the black cloud. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, you've been tricked. Chapter 4281. Following his words, the space within a few hundred miles began to vibrate. The five-colored starlight that had previously filled the sky fell from the sky. At the same time, the five-colored starlight that had appeared at the feet of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Majesty also began to roll up wildly, trapping him in the domain of the five-colored starlight. Sensing the power of the five-colored starlight, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva seemed to have thought of something. He frowned and slapped the top of his head. Boom! The Buddhist light gushed out and turned into tens of thousands of lotuses to protect him and Zhen Kong. At the same time, the 8th-grade Buddhist lotus under his feet also overflowed with Buddhist light. It suddenly expanded and protected him. Countless golden runes surged around his body. Amidst the chanting of thousands of Buddhas, the golden body of the Buddha appeared. What's the use of this golden body of the Buddha? Break. Inside the dark clouds, there was still no sign of the demon's true form. However, with a low roar, the five-colored starlight that filled the sky broke through the air. The lotuses were smashed into pieces by the five-colored starlight. The space that was enveloped by the Buddha's light began to collapse. Namu Metria Buddha. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's expression changed slightly. The mirror behind his head overflowed with Buddhist light. Countless streams of faith flowed out of the mirror and turned into thumb-sized lotuses that flew into the sky again. Once the Buddhist light and lotuses appeared, the entire space stabilized again. At the same time, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva raised his hand and waved it. The jade ruyi flashed across the mirror and hundreds of Buddhist kingdoms fell into it. Roar! Dozens of heavenly dragons flew out of the void and surrounded the jade ruyi as they fell towards the dark clouds. However, the space where the jade ruyi landed was shattered. The dark clouds didn't even have a chance to escape. The Buddhist light suddenly appeared and shattered all the dark clouds. The dark clouds disappeared, revealing the true form of the demon within the dark clouds. A five-colored shell appeared in front of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. There were countless strange patterns engraved on the shell and the five-colored light was produced from these patterns. Boom! The space within 100 miles of the shell was completely confined. The jade scepter carried the power of the dragon and elephant, mixed with the power of the Buddhist kingdom, and fell on the five-colored light. Amidst the glaring Buddhist light, the five-colored light of the shell also emitted an extremely bright brilliance, entangling with the Buddhist light. The whole world was trembling. The entire snow mountain was shaking. Whether it was the Buddhist light or the dark clouds, they were all shattered in the trembling. The five-colored shell was shot into the void and shadows appeared in the air. However, when Samantabhadra Bodhisattva lifted the jade ruyi, a laugh sounded in the void again. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, you've been tricked again. The Bodhisattva of the Thunder Temple is so. Damn it. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was rarely angry. He cursed in a low voice and opened his mouth. Countless heavenly flowers fell madly towards the main hall of the exquisite temple as if he wanted to protect Chuanzang in the exquisite temple. Unfortunately, before the heavenly flowers fell, the sky above the exquisite temple lit up like a mountain. The five-colored light soared into the sky again. The shell that was shot into the void had unknowingly moved to the top of the exquisite temple. The opened shell covered the entire main hall. The heavenly flowers fell on the 5-colored light and turned into Buddhist light. Master! Zhunfeng and Zhunhan shouted and rushed out at the right time to the main hall. Unfortunately, before they could get close, they were pushed back by the 5-colored light. Evildor! Samantabhadra Bodhisattva roared and raised the jade rui again. He scolded angrily, Chuanzang is the sutra seeker of nirvana that my thunder temple and the immortal palace found together. His safety concerns the safety of the 3 continents. If you hurt him, don't blame the Buddhist sect and the Confucian sect for joining forces to attack the 1,000 demons' sacred realm. Oh my! The voice in the shell was very strange. You scared me to death. So this is the sutra seeker that the Confucian sect and the Buddhist sect found together. It concerns the safety of the 2 sects of the human race? However, I heard that the Mahayana Buddhist Sutra has already been obtained. Let this little pawn of the Dragon Palace carry it to the hidden immortal continent. Why do you still need this sutra seeker? Quickly release Chuanzang. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was somewhat helpless and shouted, Chuanzang must personally bring the Mahayana Buddhist Sutra back to the longevity town. Otherwise, this sutra seeker of nirvana will not be considered finish. Yes, don't worry, Samantabhadra. I will definitely let this little monk go. Moreover, I will definitely not harm a single hair on his head. The voice was very calm. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva heard this and could not help but feel relieved. He nodded and said, since you are so tactful, as long as you release Chuanzang, I will not pursue this matter. However, before he could finish, the voice interrupted him. I just want to live forever and eat a piece of Chuanzang's flesh. Impudent! Samantabhadra Bodhisattva felt like he was being played. He sneered and said, that is just a lie that the primordial chaos ancestor instigated the demon race to destroy the sutra seeker of nirvana. How can you believe that? If it was in the past, I would naturally not believe it. However, today, I saw the phenomenon of nirvana on the great snow mountain. How can I not believe it? The voice was very proud. The scattered light on the shell shrank and shrank as if it was laughing maniacally. Before the physical body of reincarnation reaches nirvana, isn't it the primer for the elixir of immortality? Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's expression changed. His originally compassionate face turned cold. He said word by word, this must be what the primordial chaos ancestor told you. The Tao sect is good at stealing the yin and yang of heaven and earth and doing things that harm the harmony of heaven and earth. Using my physical body to refine pills may have some magical effects. However, you must know that the reincarnation of a Buddha carries karma. How can the Tao sect's pills remove this karma? Your strength is now on the verge of the upper 8th grade of origin energy. The demon race's great sage position is in sight. It is unwise to ruin your future for the sake of immortality. If there is no limit to life, the great sage and the Buddha Lord are nothing. The great demon seemed to be moved by Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. I see. When Samantabhadra Bodhisattva heard this, he immediately understood. He smiled and said, I already know. If you let Chuanzang go, I can guarantee that I will personally go to Mahavarokana and ask for one for you. What do you think? This. The demon in the shell sounded hesitant. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva took advantage of the situation and said, don't worry. I already know about your background and I also know about the existence of that person. You definitely did not get that person's permission to come out this time. Otherwise, that person would definitely not let you come. Don't you think so? You. How do you know? The demon was shocked and asked hurriedly, what's so difficult about that? Samantabhadra Bodhisattva smiled and said, how many demons in the world can have the 5-colored halo? My lay-in temple is in charge of everything in the world. How can I not know about that person's existence? All right. The demon in the shell saw that its background was exposed and did not want to cause any more trouble. It took a step back and said, I can release this monk, but you must give me that fire ape. Why do you want Shen Kong? Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was surprised. He is only protecting Chuanzang's disciple. He killed my great-grandson. The demon gritted its teeth and said, if I don't capture him and skin him alive, How can I put down my face? Sigh. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was in a difficult position. Looking at the demonic creature's appearance, it must have been tricked by the Grand Mist ancestor, and the great-grandson he mentioned must have been in the same situation. However, his great-grandson had become a sacrifice in the sutra seeking extreme bliss tribulation, completing Chuanzang's tribulation. Since he was strong enough, he had blackmailed the Buddhist sect. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he closed it again. He might not know who this demon's great-grandson was, but the Buddhist sect's arhat in charge of the tribulation would definitely know. If the culprit was Zhen Kong, it would be better to say that it was the Grand Mist ancestor or some other arhat. How could Samantabhadra Bodhisattva say that? Samantabhadra Bodhisattva could only ponder for a moment. He glanced at the wounded Zhen Kong hiding in his Buddhist light and said, "Zhen Kong is right here. You can come and take him at any time. However, you should let Chuanzang out first and ask him. After all, he is Zhen Kong's master." Zhen Kong was powerlessly lying in the air. The demon's five-colored halo was extremely strange. Not only did it destroy his physical body, but it also prevented his physical body from recovering. Moreover, it was corroding his heart and lungs at an extremely fast speed. Zhen Kong circulated his cultivation technique to resist. He saw everything that happened in front of him. Perhaps he already knew his ending, but there was no cowering or fear in his eyes. "Ha ha! Samantabhadra, are you trying to shirk responsibility?" The demon found it funny when he heard Huang Xiaolong's words. "The little monk is in my hands. His life and death is up to my will. Can he object? Why don't you just send Zhen Kong over? Why go through all this trouble? Namu Maitreya." Samantabhadra Bodhisattva waved his hand and Zhen Kong was sent to him. He said, "Ask Chuanzang. As long as he nods, I will immediately hand Zhen Kong over to you." "You really took off your pants to fart. What an unnecessary move." The demon was a little impatient. The light from the shell spread out and revealed Chuanzang's figure. He said coldly, "Little monk, you already know the origin of this matter. Do you want to be eaten by me? Or do you want Zhen Kong to come with me?" "Namu Amitabha." Chuanzang didn't hesitate at all. He chanted the name of Buddha. "How can I let my disciple die for me? I am willing to go with you." "Ah!" The demon was completely stunned. You want to be eaten by me? Is there something wrong with your brain?" "Chuanzang." Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was also very anxious. He shouted, "Don't forget your responsibility. Don't forget the great wish you made in the longevity town. Sacrificing Zhen Kong can save countless lives." Chapter 4282. Chuanzang took a deep breath and looked at Zhen Kong. "Yes, I remember my great wish. I'm willing to let my Buddha light shine on the hidden immortal. I also hope that the kind men and women of the three continents will listen to the teachings of my Mahayana Sutra. But Zhen Kong is also a living being. Not to mention the fact that he has protected me for 200 years, even if he's a complete stranger, I have no right to decide his life and death. In this world, the only one who can decide my life and death is myself. I'm willing to exchange my life for Zhen Kong's." Idiot. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva couldn't help but scold. "Chuanzang, not to mention that just the fact that you're responsible for the Sutra of Nirvana means that you can't talk about life and death. Your life and death no longer belongs to you but to the Thunder Temple and the Immortal Palace. Your death could lead to the deaths of millions and millions of lives." After hearing Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's words, Chuanzang felt an inexplicable sense of disgust. He was extremely disgusted by this act of sacrificing oneself for the greater good. Moreover, he seemed to have heard some other meaning from the words. However, he didn't show it. Instead, he put his palms together and said, "Namo Amitabha, I've already obtained the Mahayana Sutra from the Thunder Temple. After I go, I only need Zhen Kong, Zhen Han, and Zhen Feng to deliver the sutra to the immortal town. Compared to the sutra, my life and death is no longer important. No, you must deliver the sutra to the immortal town's river tide temple. Why must I deliver it personally? Chuanzang asked in surprise. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva clenched his teeth and said patiently, "There's no need to talk about this now. If you don't make a decision, then I'll help you." Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was just about to speak when a five-colored halo appeared around his body. His hand lightened as Zhenkong disappeared into thin air. The monster's voice sounded triumphant again. "Since it's so difficult, why don't you just let me take them all? How dare you?" Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was shocked and waved the jade rui again. Rumble. At this moment, there was another thunderous sound in the sky above the great snow mountain. The black and white color that was previously hidden behind the light of Buddha and later covered by the demonic creature's five-colored halos and dark demonic clouds suddenly shone brightly. Moreover, thick lightning threads that were even more vigorous than horned dragons surged out from these black and white patterns. Lightning energy that exceeded everyone's understanding seeped out from these lightning threads and frantically covered the 10,000-mile radius of the Great Snow Mountain. What was special was that when these thunder threads appeared, the power of thunder within hundreds of thousands of miles was stimulated. Layers of the power of heaven and earth turned into thunder and lightning, gathering towards the Great Snow Mountain. It was as if thousands of thunders were converging. The entire sky, with the Great Snow Mountain as the center, formed layers of huge thunder vortexes, rolling one after another, as if they were rippling all over the sky. Not only that, but as soon as these thunder lights formed, a cryptic, heavy, cold, vast, and unparalleled will of heaven and earth flowed out from the cracks of the thunder lights, instantly covering hundreds of thousands of miles. The phenomenon of the Great Snow Mountain had long attracted the attention of the supreme beings of the three continents. Every being released their consciousness to investigate and pay attention to the development of the situation. Previously, the signs of Nanwu Mettria Buddha attaining enlightenment had completely blocked these consciousnesses, and the strange appearance of the demonic creatures had allowed these consciousnesses to enter the Great Snow Mountain. At this moment, the appearance of thousands of thunders instantly crushed these consciousnesses, and all the supreme beings hurriedly tried to withdraw their consciousnesses. Unfortunately, the will of heaven and earth didn't give them any chance at all. The will of heaven and earth covered hundreds of thousands of miles and completely strangled these consciousnesses, leaving no trace at all, not to mention the Thunder Temple, Immortal Palace, Great Sage Temple, and the other supreme beings, who were all shocked. Even Nanwu Mettria Samantabhadra and the unknown great demon at the center of the thunder lights were incomparably shocked. This was because when the power of thunder appeared, the entire Great Snow Mountain was imprisoned by the thunder lights. Everyone felt as if they were submerged in incomparably heavy innate heavy water, and they couldn't even breathe. Zhenkong's figure had already been revealed. He had been captured by a five-colored halo on the great shell demon's body, and the five-colored halo had turned into a hand and was tightly gripping Zhenkong's neck. The pitiful Zhenkong was holding onto the halo with both hands, and he seemed to be desperately struggling. As for Chunzong, he had also appeared from the five-colored halo. At this moment, his hands were twisted behind his back, and his entire body was entangled by several rays of light, making him look very miserable. However, no one cared about the miserable state of the two of them at this moment, and they all raised their eyes to look at the center of the thunder lights in the sky. At the center of the thunder lights, the great demon's five-colored halo had already collapsed, and the mountain-like black clouds had been swept away. However, the Buddhist light that had previously filled the Great Snow Mountain didn't dissipate at all. Moreover, the Buddha light that had almost collapsed from the impact of the five-colored halo actually became more solid. Nanwu Mettria Samantabhadra didn't know what had happened, but when he saw the Buddha statue become more solid, his heart calmed down. Buzz buzz. Nanwu Mettria Samantabhadra's heart had just calmed down when he saw that in the space sealed by the thunder lights, endless movements appeared around the Buddha statue. The heaven and earth within 1,000 miles shook, and the wind and clouds changed colors. Endless power of faith was born from the void, and poured down on the Buddha statue like a waterfall. The vast power of faith fell into the mirror behind the Buddha statue, and the light on the mirror became more and more resplendent, as if a scorching sun was gradually being born. Under the scorching sun, the Buddha statue became more and more plump, and it gradually became taller and bigger, and gradually filled the entire center of the thunder lights. Nanwu Mettria Buddha has attained fruition? Nanwu Metria Samantabhadra was stunned again. He really didn't understand. He had thought that Chuanzang was Nanwu Metria's present reincarnation body, and that he would attain fruition today. However, when Chuanzang entered the main hall, other than the phenomenon of fruition on the surface, there was no substantial movement at all. Now, when Nanwu Metria Samantabhadra gave up on this idea, the phenomenon of Nanwu Metria Buddha's fruition appeared again. However, when he saw that the phenomenon of fruition stopped in the sky and didn't fall, and Chuanzang was still in the hands of the great demon with an unpredictable background, Nanwu Metria Samantabhadra understood that Chuanzang was definitely not the Buddha who had attained fruition. Nanwu Metria Buddha's throne has changed hands. This is a major event that has never happened since the creation of the world. I don't know which powerful Buddha Lord took the throne from Namo Metria. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Metria had already understood the outcome. He pondered with mixed feelings, this is the greatest secret of the Buddhism sect. I'm lucky enough to see it. Whether it's a blessing or a misfortune, it's all up to me. Boom. Just as Nanwu Metria Samantabhadra's thoughts raced, the sun-like light suddenly produced a 1,000-mile-thick pillar of Buddha's light. This pillar of light soared into the sky, carrying the power of faith from 100,000 miles up in the sky, and rushed straight into the center of the thunder light. Like a giant invisible pillar inserted into a pool of water, the center of the thunder lights stirred up a 1,000-mile-wide pitch-black vortex that pierced straight into the void. At the same time, the ghostly green light that had appeared first, but had now been forgotten by everyone, stuck close to the edge of the vortex and went deep into it. Woo woo woo. A mysterious sound that sounded like the cries of gods and ghosts was heard in the void. Wherever the ghostly green light flashed, the black and white in the thunder lights immediately intertwined and turned into a grayish-white color. This grayish-white color was as still as marble at first, but then it condensed into the green light and began to swirl wildly. A huge transmission channel finally took shape in Nanwu Metria Samantabhadra's shock. Buzz. The space thousands of miles above the sky rumbled because of the appearance of this space channel. The entire space was distorted by the pressure. All the light and shadows, whether they were Buddha's light, thunder lights, or clouds, were elongated. The sound of thunder was also faintly discernible in everyone's ears. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. The will of heaven and earth, which had previously imprisoned hundreds of thousands of miles of the Great Snow Mountain, began to permeate the space, creating ripples in the distorted light and shadows. Someone from the Buddhist kingdom? Nanwu Metria Samantabhadra was so shocked that he was numb. He did not know how to think. A thought was barely squeezed out of his mind, but it was instantly shattered by the scene in front of him. Woo! A strange whistling sound of wind was heard. It was extremely long. Then, countless crazy waves of energy were emitted from the teleportation channel. These waves of energy carried with them the power to destroy the heavens and the earth. However, as soon as these ripples appeared, they were immediately destroyed by the will of heaven and earth that permeated through the space channel. Rumble. Tens of thousands of thunderbolts in the space gathered toward the space channel. In the blink of an eye, all the thunderbolts had gathered into a huge ball. As soon as this ball of thunderbolts was formed, the transmission channel that pierced straight into the void began to shrink and collapse. The green, gray, and Buddha's light instantly reversed. Boom! A huge rumble sounded again, and the entire sky was silent. All the colors faded, and a golden Buddha statue that was tens of thousands of feet tall appeared in the ball of thunderbolts like a dazzling stream of light. Nanwu Metria Buddha. Although he could not see what the golden Buddha statue looked like in the thunderbolts, Nanwu Metria Samantabhadra still chanted Buddha's name with a smile on his face. It seemed that he had made a decision at this moment. Boom! The silence only lasted for a few breaths. Then, tens of thousands of thunderbolts surged. All the thunderbolts converged, and like a myriad of streams returning to their origin, they fell into a tall and thin figure behind the golden Buddha statue. Amidst the thunderbolts, a slightly excited and surprised voice rang out. Damn it, that was so close. I didn't expect that this transmission channel would not be enough to reach the Great Snow Mountain. If not for the Great Master's power of faith on the Great Snow Mountain, and the fact that this power of faith can ignore space and time, Even if I left a divine will mark here, I'm afraid that I wouldn't have been able to be transmitted here so easily. Chapter 4283. Namo Metria Buddha, don't be happy too early. We haven't explored yet, so we don't know if this is the Great Snow Mountain. If this is the Great Snow Mountain we are in, at this time, the lightning disappeared, and a divine sense that made Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's heart tremble swept over from the place where the lightning disappeared. When that divine sense instantly covered the entire Great Snow Mountain, the excitement and ecstasy in that voice disappeared without a trace. Yes, this is the Great Snow Mountain, and below us is the exquisite temple. Even, this Great Snow Mountain is the Great Snow Mountain we are in, because the sutra seeking extreme bliss has only just begun. Namo Metria Buddha. Another voice sounded in the air. This way, our inner demons can be cut off. Yes, since we have already returned, this welcoming ceremony is unnecessary. While speaking, Xiao Hua's thin and tall figure slowly walked down from where the lightning was. It was as if there was a flight of stairs that led to the heavens. As Xiao Hua walked down, layers of pressure fell on the little exquisite temple like a huge mountain. When Xiao Hua's voice fell, Xiao Hua raised his hand and waved. A huge palm appeared, and all the fluctuations and strange lights fell into his palm. However, it was only a moment before the omnipresent will of the world fell again. With a swish-swish sound, the huge hand immediately shrank by more than 40%. However, even so, in the sky, other than the Buddhist light, the five-colored halo, the dark clouds, the lightning, and the clouds were all taken into Xiao Hua's hand. Even the sky that was like a wrinkle was smoothed out by him at this moment, causing everyone to tremble in fear. As soon as the anomaly disappeared, a strange phenomenon occurred around the golden Buddha statue once again. Rumble. The Buddha's light that was previously covered by the lightning shone brightly again. The river of faith that was originally like a gurgling stream was now like a monstrous torrent that gushed out from various cracks in the void and fell into the light of the Buddha's light that had already solidified. Namo Metria Buddha, Namo Metria Buddha. Wherever the river of faith went, millions of Buddhist kingdoms were born. Endless heavenly flowers covered 100,000 miles of space, and a strange fragrance filled the air. Thousands of heavenly dragons and fairies began to appear. The sound of wooden fish and the chanting of 10,000 Buddhas sounded like the sounds of nature. An indescribable benevolence was emitted from the forehead of the Buddha statue. Moreover, the Buddha statue slowly fell, and its target was the golden Buddha statue that Xiao Hua had just left. Namo Metria Buddha. At this point, Samantabhadra no longer had any doubts. As long as the Buddhist light condensed from the power of faith fell into the golden Buddha statue, the Buddha Lord from the Buddhist kingdom would definitely attain Namo Metria Buddha's fruit. However, what surprised Samantabhadra was that although the Buddhist light of the golden Buddha statue hadn't dissipated and he still couldn't see the Buddha Lord's appearance clearly, after the golden Buddha statue slowly returned to normal, it raised its hand slightly and an 8th-rank Buddhist lotus appeared, wanting to block the descending golden Buddha statue. How is this possible? Doesn't the Buddha Lord want to attain fruit? Samantabhadra was dumbfounded. However, the Buddhist lotus didn't seem to be enough to block the Buddha statue that had attained fruit. The Buddha statue landed on the lotus platform under its feet. Alas, why do you have to make things difficult for this poor monk? The golden body of the Buddha sighed. The compassion in his words made the selfish thoughts in Samantabhadra Bodhisattva's heart disappear instantly. Then, the golden body of the Buddha waved his hand, and a 7-colored light flashed. A Buddhist instrument fell on top of his head, blocking the Buddha statue that had attained fruition. How is this possible? Which Buddhist weapon can? The wonderful tree of 7 treasures. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was completely dumbfounded. Why is this Buddhist treasure here? Namo Metria Buddha, I understand now. With this item alone, Buddha Lord can obtain the position of Namo Metria Buddha. Since the Buddha statue was stopped, the golden Buddha statue returned to its original state. When the golden Buddha statue turned around, Samantabhadra of Namo Pilgrim had a complete mental breakdown. He was almost ecstatic in his heart, because there was another Chuanzang in front of him. This This. Samantabhadra felt his golden body lose its color and he felt like scratching his ears and cheeks. Second senior brother, quickly come and see. Draconic horse Zhen Feng raised its head, its hooves trembling slightly as it said, "There's another monk in the sky." Nonsense. Zhen Han swallowed a mouthful of saliva and whispered, "That's Master." Master? Draconic horse Zhen Feng was stunned. Looking at Chuanzang, who was still being captured by the five-colored demon race, he asked curiously, "Isn't our master that? How can that weak monk be our master?" Zhen Han coldly transmitted, "Only this Buddha Lord who can attain Buddhahood can be our master." Draconic horse Zhen Feng understood the meaning of Zhen Han's words and couldn't help but shout, "Second senior brother, you're really good at taking advantage of the situation." Zhen Han smiled and said, "There are hundreds of millions of people like me in the 3 continents. One more won't make much of a difference." Namo Mettria Buddha. The Buddha statue with the face of Chuanzang, but in reality, it was Buddha Subhuti's golden body. Just as it was about to speak, Xiao Hua opened his mouth. His voice was extremely cold and frigid. Even though his voice was extremely faint, it resounded like thunder within the space of 1,000 li. Master, let's put your matter aside for now. It won't be too late to talk about it after I deal with this matter. I'll listen to Tanua's instructions. Body smiled and didn't say anything. He also slowly walked down from the sky. As Body walked down from the sky, the imprisonment of the entire Great Snow Mountain disappeared like snow-melting ice. Seeing that the imprisonment was gone, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly stepped on the lotus platform and flew up to the sky to greet Body. He put his palms together and saluted, "Disciple Samantabhadra Bodhisattva greets Mettria Buddha of the world." Namo Mettria Buddha. Body waved his right hand and the Buddha light turned into a cluster of heavenly flowers that supported Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. He said, "This poor monk isn't Buddha Lord Mettria Buddha. Bodhisattva, you've bowed to the wrong person." "What? Buddha Lord? Buddha Lord isn't Buddha Lord?" Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was even more surprised. He looked at the Buddha fruit above his head that was blocked by the wonderful tree of 7 treasures and almost blurted out, "You've taken the Buddha position and you still say you're not Buddha Lord?" Xiao Hua walked to the sky above the Xiao Linglong temple. His eyes swept across the temple that had not changed much. The scene of him meeting the old monk here that day quickly flashed past his eyes, and then his eyes fell on Chuanzang, who was captured by the monster. He already understood that today was the day when Jiang Liuer passed by the Great Snow Mountain and obtained the gold leaf of the exquisite Palm Leaf Sutra from the Xiao Linglong temple. But long before this moment, he had already taken away the gold leaf. Today, Jiang Liuer was destined not to get the gold leaf, destined not to achieve fruition. Fortunately, he had rushed back in time. The sutra seeking nirvana had just begun, and Jiang Liuer was only passing by the Great Snow Mountain. As long as his Buddha avatar returned the exquisite leaf sutra and the ancient Kali he had obtained from the primitive continent to Jiang Liuer would be able to achieve perfect fruition as a Chuanzang. When Xiao Hua's eyes moved from the colorful brilliance in Yuan Tongqian's body to the light strands on Chuanzang's body and then to the shell monster, he laughed angrily and said, "Who are you? How dare you disturb the sutra seeking in paradise? Haha, it doesn't matter who I am. What matters is, who's behind me?" Seeing Xiao Hua's divine sense, the monster naturally knew that he was no match for him. He simply said straightforwardly, "My ancestor is the master of the colorful sea in the 1,000 demons sacred realm. If you know what's good for you, don't ask any more. Before you came, I had already discussed with Samantabhadra. Since the little monk is the Buddha of the sutra seeking in paradise, I won't make things difficult for him. This fire ape is the culprit who killed my great-grandson. I can't let him go. Otherwise, my ancestor's face will be ruined. If my ancestor gets angry and attacks the Thunder Temple, I'm afraid none of us will have an easy time." Ha ha ha. Xiao Hua laughed so hard that he was rocking back and forth. He pointed at the 5-colored demon race and said, "If it was before the sutra seeking extreme bliss, this poor Daoist would have hesitated. But now, these words are just a joke in this poor Daoist's ears. If your ancestor's face is ruined and the Thunder Temple's face is ruined, then does this Xiao's face look good? This Xiao. The monster was stunned. As if he thought of something, he suddenly said in a low voice, you're Xiao Hua? Then, the five-colored halo around the monster's body shone brightly. He quickly pounced on Chuanzang, as if he wanted to cut off all means of retreat. Chemph. When Xiao Hua saw that this demonic being actually knew his name, he thought that it was an old acquaintance. However, when he saw the demonic being's actions, he knew that it was definitely an enemy. He coldly snorted, and with a shake of his divine sense, the demonic being's surroundings were imprisoned. The five-colored halo of light was like a giant hand that was suspended in midair. Woo! Xiao Hua raised his hand and grabbed. Chuanzang rose into the air. The five-colored golden light that even Samantabhadra Bodhisattva couldn't do anything to turned into a ball of light and fell into his hand. When Chuanzang landed beside him, he looked at the wind and frost between Jiang Luo's eyebrows. His heart was slightly sour. He said warmly, "Stay by my side." Yes. Xiao Hua's gaze was so gentle that it directly shone into Chuanzang's heart. A kind of indescribable warmth fell into Chuanzang's heart. This feeling was 10,000 times stronger than when he met Vairocana Buddha at Lei-Yin Temple. The concern in Xiao Hua's tone was the kind of natural concern of a senior. It was a kind of pure affection in the world, making Chuanzang unable to have any doubts. When Chuanzang agreed, he saw a slight smile on Xiao Hua's lips. Chuanzang's heart was greatly shaken. His eyes suddenly became moist. A long, long time ago, in the childhood memories that he had to frantically search for at night, Xiao Hua's familiar appearance faintly emerged. This familiarity made him feel incomparably safe. Chapter 4284. Xiao Hua originally wanted to turn his head, but when he saw Chuanzang's expression change, his heart moved, and he said with a smile, "Chuanzang, don't be afraid, just stand here. With this Xiao here, no matter who it is, they can't hurt even a hair on your head." Xiao Hua's words were really arrogant, but in Chuanzang's ears, they were so firm. He didn't put his palms together to speak, but slightly nodded, and replied, "Yes." At this time, his expression had already returned to normal. Useless thing. Xiao Hua's gaze fell on the seriously injured Yuan Tongtian in midair, and he scolded. Yuan Tongtian saw Xiao Hua's powerful appearance, and his heart was already shocked. He and Xiao Hua's fate was not shallow. Early on in the Flame Forest Swamp, when he was released from the seal, he saw Xiao Hua. At that time, Xiao Hua was just an aura-refining cultivator, and in his eyes, he was just an ant. Later on, when he saw Xiao Hua again, the fire ape began to suffer in Xiao Hua's hands. After that, Yuan Tongtian refused to submit to Xiao Hua several times, and that unruly temperament aroused Xiao Hua's good impression. Now that he saw Xiao Hua again on the snowy mountain in the Pure Land world, Yuan Tongtian almost didn't dare to believe his eyes. At this time, Xiao Hua's magical power was far from what he could compare to. His unruly temperament simply didn't have the qualifications to be arrogant in front of Xiao Hua. However, when Yuan Tongtian heard Xiao Hua's words, he was stunned at first, but then, a shock that was even more indescribable than when he saw Xiao Hua rose from the bottom of his heart. In just an instant, he seemed to have understood something. He was originally imprisoned by Xiao Hua. How did he inexplicably come to the Pure Land world? Perhaps only Xiao Hua knew. Moreover, although Xiao Hua's words were scolding, but it was obviously a kind of rebuke from an elder to a junior. Yuan Tongtian connected Patriarch Subhuti and Xiao Hua together, and he couldn't help but struggle. Xiao Hua also didn't expect that in Yuan Tongtian's ears, his words were simply 100 times more effective than elixirs. Yuan Tongtian's dispirited face immediately showed ecstasy, and the heart that had been wandering for hundreds of years suddenly returned to him. His eyes blossomed with a rare golden light, and that golden light was blocked by overflowing tears. Yuan Tongtian suddenly flew into the air. His flesh that had been torn apart by the five-colored halo was now bleeding profusely. Chemph. Seeing Yuan Tongtian like this, Xiao Hua's heart ached for no reason. He waved his hand, and the five-colored brilliance around Yuan Tongtian's body also fell into his hand, and at the same time, a medicinal pill, and said to come to the Pure Land world to seek scriptures. To seek scriptures isn't to be courting death? How would Yuan Tongtian dare to speak? When the medicinal pill fell into his stomach, the magical effect rushed out from inside out, and the wounds all over Yuan Tongtian's body healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Sigh. Others might not know, but Namo Great House Samantabhadra was extremely clear about the dangers of the five-colored halo. This halo that even gave Mahavarokana a headache was like child's play in Xiao Hua's hands. How could he not be shocked? Immediately after, Xiao Hua did another thing that shocked everyone. Xiao Hua didn't make a move against the five-colored demon, but instead raised his hand and took out the Kunlun mirror from his bosom. Under the urging of his magic power, a beam of light shot out, and 1,000 Zhonglong pig demon flew out from that beam of light. What a big pig! Dragon Horse Zhenfeng couldn't help but cry out in surprise in the small temple. How many meals will it take to finish this? When this pig demon appeared, the will of the world that had already disappeared near the snowy mountain reappeared. With a crackling sound, inexplicable thunderbolts and fluctuations fell into the pig demon's body, and the pig demon's body rapidly shrank, and in a few breaths, it was only 100 Zhonglong. Stop eating. Xiao Hua looked at the sleepy Tunchen, who still didn't know what was going on, and angrily scolded, "Why aren't you looking at who this is? Who is it?" When Tunchen heard Xiao Hua tell him to stop eating, he was startled at first, but when he saw Zhang Lu'er beside Xiao Hua, the sleepiness on his face instantly disappeared, and a kind of excitement and ecstasy emerged from his heart. He recklessly threw himself in front of Chuanzang, kowtowed, and shouted, "Buddha Lord, you. So you are here. Amitabha." Chuanzang naturally didn't understand what was going on, and was somewhat at a loss as to what to do as he looked at this unusually simple and honest pig demon, not knowing what to do. Xiao Hua looked at Yuan Tongtian, and then at Dragon Horse Zhenfeng and Zhenhan in the small temple, and his eyes turned, and he said with a smile, "Your Buddha Lord is currently praying for sutras in paradise, and needs a disciple to protect him. Whether you can obtain this honor or not will depend on your performance." Yes, this disciple understands. Tunchen was really ecstatic, and the pig head looked around. When it saw the five-colored shell, it immediately understood something and roared loudly, "What? Are you the one who wants to rob my master? What do you mean by your master? If you can't kill this thing, what face do you have to call yourself his disciple?" Xiao Hua said with a sneer. "Do you still need me to take action for this little thing?" Tunchen didn't care at all, and raised his hand to take out the nine-toothed rake. The rake emitted a bright light. Woo! The nine-toothed rake flew across the sky, tearing the void, and hit the shell with a boom. Unfortunately, where the light landed, the five-colored halo brought out several strange patterns, and actually blocked the nine-toothed rake. Damn it! Tunchen couldn't keep his face, and waved the nine-toothed rake again. If this old man imprisons this monster again, it will be said that the strong are bullying the weak. Xiao Hua laughed and removed the imprisonment. The five-colored monster loosened its body, and hurriedly urged its divine ability to fight against Tunchen. You don't need to think about escaping. Xiao Hua saw that the five-colored monster wanted to fight while retreating, and immediately said with a smile, "You can't escape from this old man's hand. This old man also won't attack you. If you can win against these juniors, you only need to tell me how you know this old man, and this old man will let you go." Good. Junior heard that Daoist Master Xiao's words carry enormous weight. I hope you all remember what you said now. The five-colored monster's body was a shellfish, and when it fanned its two hard shells, the five-colored halo danced in the surrounding 100 miles. Seeing that the halo couldn't fly more than half a foot, the five-colored monster knew that it couldn't escape, and hurriedly dealt with Tunchen while answering. Boom! In the instant that he was distracted, the nine-toothed rake smashed into one of his shells, causing the five-colored light to become chaotic, which was a rare sight. Seeing that the nine-toothed rake was only able to cause the five-colored shell to shake, the heaven-devouring beast let out an angry roar. Although the roar was like a pig's snort, the strands of lightning mixed with the wind soared into the sky and landed on the five-colored shell with a rumble, dispersing the five-colored light and revealing the demon's shell. Chimpage. Xiao Hua coldly snorted. If he didn't say anything, how could he personally attack? Xiao Hua could not help but frown as he watched the heaven-devouring beast and the five-colored demon race fight for a while. The heaven-devouring beast's strength was comparable to the borderline 9th grade essence force on the elemental desolate continent. However, in the elemental paradise, due to the laws of heaven and earth, his divine abilities were greatly restricted. Currently, his essence force was merely at the upper 8th grade. Even though this five-colored demon race's strength was only at the lower stages of the 8th grade of essence force, its shell was very sturdy and the five-colored halo was very mystical. Under such circumstances, the sky-devouring demon race seemed to be on par with the five-colored demon race. Even if a winner could be determined, it would be a long time later. Xiao Hua's strange teleportation to the snowy mountain had already shocked the Thunder Temple. Moreover, Nanwu Metria Buddha still wanted to achieve enlightenment. Xiao Hua didn't want to attract the attention of Mahavairokkana, so he glanced at Yuan Tongtian, who had already opened his eyes, and said coldly, "How are your injuries? If Zhenren Xiao knows, I won't die." Yuan Tongtian almost called out the word master, but seeing Xiao Hua's appearance, he didn't dare to be too sure. Of course, Patriarch Body said clearly that he shouldn't call him master in the future, so Yuan Tongtian hurriedly changed the way he addressed Xiao Hua. "That's good." Xiao Hua waved his hand, took out the wishful steel rod, and threw it to Yuan Tongtian. "I'll lend you this thing first, go kill this monster first." "Yes, Zhenren." Seeing Xiao Hua throw his weapon to him, Yuan Tongtian was really happy. After receiving it, he shouted, "Junior will not shame Zhenren." Yuan Tongtian practiced the dragon transformation art, and his arms were infinitely strong, but the moment he received the wishful steel rod, his whole body couldn't help but fall a lot. But it was only a few breaths. Yuan Tongtian roared, waved the wishful steel rod, and rushed to the five-colored demon clan. The five-colored demon clan was already tired of resisting the Tunchen, so how could he handle Yuan Tongtian's addition? It was just a few rounds. Boom! The wishful steel rod fell on the five-colored halo, and the five-colored halo, which specialized in restraining the Buddhist light, dissipated in front of absolute power. Kaka. The moment the halo dissipated, the nine-toothed rake fell, and suddenly smashed several cracks in the shell. Puff puff puff. Just as the crack appeared, the sound of wind whistling was heard in the air again. Several pale white shadows fell and pierced into the crack again, piercing deep into the shell. They were the bone spikes that had been hidden in the air for a long time. "Oh oh!" The five-colored demon clan cried out in pain, and the two shells couldn't help but open. Puff! The Tunchen's pig nose had already spewed out lightning, and it took advantage of the gap to hit the five-colored demon clan inside the shell. Zilla! Under the lingering lightning, the halo above the shell was shattered, and when the light disappeared, the strange texture on the shell was also smoothed out. Demon, looking for a beating. Yuan Tongtian was excited, and the wishful steel rod in his hand fell on the demon clan's shell. Without the five-colored light, the shell was like fragile glass, and with a crack, it was shattered. However, compared to the heaven-devouring beast, Yuan Tongtian's strike was nothing. The heaven-devouring beast raised its front hoof and smashed down like a mountain. Boom! With a loud bang, all the shells in its path were shattered. Moreover, a huge pig's hoof mark appeared on the five-colored body. Chapter 4285. Damn it, this is probably the most powerful pig I've ever seen. Zhenfeng couldn't help but send a voice transmission to Zhenhan. Unfortunately, Zhenhan turned a deaf ear to Zhenfeng's words, as if she was thinking about something else. If you dare to touch me, my ancestor will definitely not let you off." The five-colored shellfish lost its support and could only shout loudly, trying to struggle. "Daoist Master Xiao." Samantha Bardra hurriedly sent a voice transmission. "This monster is right, its ancestor is indeed very difficult to deal with. Even Mahavairokkana doesn't want to cause too much trouble. Daoist Master doesn't need to be too difficult." Xiao Hua thought for a moment, then raised his hand and pointed. His right index finger was like a bolt of lightning, instantly landing on the shellfish monster's body. Not good. The monster was shocked, but he only had a thought before Xiao Hua's index finger landed on his body like the annihilation of heaven and earth. All the surrounding light and shadow were covered by this index finger. Damn it! How could the monster not know what Xiao Hua wanted to do? Just as he felt the whole world sink into darkness, he cursed inwardly. The five-colored halo immediately became chaotic, and a powerful destructive wave was born from the monster's body. Chimph! Xiao Hua coldly snorted, then raised his hand and grabbed. The five-colored halo instantly became still, and his finger still landed on the monster's body paper. However, it was only for a moment, and the five-colored halo became chaotic again, and the wave was still rushing out. Oh! Xiao Hua was slightly stunned, and the corner of his mouth revealed disdain as he said, "Since you want to die, then I'll fulfill your wish. Kill." Xiao Hua ordered without hesitation, then raised his hand and grabbed. The chaotic five-colored halo fell into the air. Xiao Hua took out the sword gourd and withdrew the five-colored halo. On the other side, devouring heaven's nine-toothed rake had already hit the monster's body. Pu. With a sound, 9 extremely deep holes appeared on the shellfish's body. Namo Metria Buddha. Chunzong couldn't help but chant when he saw Tunchen kill the five-colored demon. Excellent, excellent. In fact, Yuan Tongtian's wishful staff was not much slower than the devouring sky beast. However, before the wishful staff fell, Yuan Tongtian hesitated for a moment. It was in this moment that the devouring sky beast killed the five-colored demon race. Yuan Tongtian stole a glance at Xiao Hua, fearing that Xiao Hua would scold him. However, at that moment, Xiao Hua's brows were tightly furrowed. Evidently, he was still furious and did not pay attention to Yuan Tongtian. Sage. Yuan Tongtian couldn't help but ask, "Is that demon?" "You don't have to ask." Xiao Hua mercilessly interrupted Yuan Tongtian's question. He raised his hand and put away the monster's five-colored shell. He then pointed at the sword gourd that he didn't put away. A fist-sized five-colored light flew out. This five-colored light wasn't from the monster just now. Xiao Hua had obtained it from the Eldritch continent. This light fell in front of Yuan Tongtian. Xiao Hua said, "This old man is fated to meet you. This thing is for you." Yuan Tongtian's heart warmed, but he didn't accept the five-colored light. Instead, he bowed and said, "This junior has a small request. I don't know if I should say it or not." "Say it." Xiao Hua was in a bad mood. He glanced at Yuan Tongtian and said casually, "Senior, although the magic wand in this junior's hand was given to me by my master, it is no longer of great use. This junior is reluctant to throw it away. If someone takes pity on this junior, can this magic wand be given to me?" Yuan Tongtian carefully raised the wishful staff above his head and asked respectfully. Xiao Hua was stunned. He didn't expect Yuan Tongtian to have such a request. However, looking at the wishful staff in Yuan Tongtian's hand, Xiao Hua was a little embarrassed. At this time, the wishful staff was no longer suitable for Xiao Hua to use. Xiao Hua had obtained the refining method of the 5 elements wishful heavenly staff and 3 of the 5 elements magnetism. As for the whereabouts of the other 2, Xiao Hua already had an idea. As long as he found the opportunity, it was possible to refine the real 5 elements wishful heavenly staff. There was no problem in giving the wishful staff to Yuan Tongtian. Of course, among Xiao Hua's direct disciples, Yuan Ya was also suitable to use the wishful staff. However, Yuan Ya already had the Bone Dragon Devil Spear, so there was no need to give the wishful staff to him. However, at this time, Yuan Tongtian was protecting Chuanzong. The Sutra Seeking Bliss was a product of the compromise between the Buddhist sect and the Confucian cultivators. Although Yuan Tongtian had already intervened in the Sutra Seeking Bliss, Xiao Hua could be regarded as the 4th force in the Sutra Seeking Bliss in addition to the Confucian cultivators, the Buddhist sect and the demon race. However, Xiao Hua had no interest in sharing any benefits from the Sutra Seeking Bliss. He told Yuan Tongtian to protect Jiang Liuer only to protect Jiang Liuer's safety. It had nothing to do with any benefits. However, if Xiao Hua gave the wishful staff to Yuan Tongtian at this time, even if Yuan Tongtian had nothing to do with Xiao Hua, those Confucian cultivators who could turn black into white would immediately let their imaginations run wild. Needless to say, Yuan Tongtian was originally related to Xiao Hua. With Xiao Hua's current cultivation and strength, it would be a joke to say that he was afraid of the Buddhist sect and the Confucian cultivators. However, if this caused a dispute, Xiao Hua felt that it was not worth it. Therefore, Xiao Hua looked at Yuan Tongqian's sincere face and said with a smile, "This old man can't give it to you now. If you like it, this old man will keep it for you first. After the sutra seeking bliss, when you return from the Thunder Temple, this old man will give it to you." Really? Yuan Tongqian was overjoyed. He somersaulted in the air and said with a smile, "Daoist master must keep this thing well. This junior has already escorted Chuanzong master back from the Thunder Temple. Now that we have passed by the Great Snow Mountain, we will soon return to the hidden immortal continent." "What?" Xiao Hua suddenly woke up and hurriedly asked, "You have already been to the Thunder Temple since the Longevity Town? You have already returned with the Mahayana Buddhist Sutra?" Yuan Tongqian's eyes turned rapidly. Thinking of the vision just now, he understood Xiao Hua's thoughts and hurriedly replied respectfully, "Let Daoist master know, if we count from the time Chuanzong master left the Longevity Town, it has already been 218 years. Daoist master must have gone to other places, so you don't know about this matter." Hearing that it was only 218 years, Xiao Hua let out a long sigh of relief and thought to himself, "That's good. Only 200 years. Oh, if we count it this way, this Xiao has been in the ruins for 100 years, and in the great desolate continent for another 100 years. The two added together is similar to the time of the 3 continents. In the heavenly prison. Haha, just treat it as a moment of seclusion." Then, Xiao Hua nodded at Yuan Tongqian and said, "That's right, this old man has some matters to attend to. I just returned from another place and happened to encounter this matter. This old man will temporarily keep it for you. After you escort Chuanzong back to the Longevity Town and complete the Sutra Seeking Bliss, feel free to come find me." With that, Xiao Hua waved his sleeve and kept the wishful staff. "Daoist master." If it was any other time, Yuan Tongqian would naturally not ask, but at this time, he was worried about his gains and losses, so he hurriedly asked, "When the time comes, where can this junior find senior? Do you still need to ask?" Xiao Hua rolled his eyes in annoyance, no longer paying attention to Yuan Tongqian, and looked at the sky-devouring beast. Seeing that Xiao Hua ignored him, Yuan Tongqian became depressed again, but after a while, he laughed involuntarily. At this time, Xiao Hua's strength was already at the 9th level of essence force, and he was already the focus of attention in the 3 continents. Where he was there still a need to ask? Was there still a need for Xiao Hua to tell him personally? Yuan Tongqian could not help but laugh. While Yuan Tongqian was rejoicing, Xiao Hua said to the sky-devouring beast, "That's right. Jie Kai, you just arrived in the 3 continents and already made a great contribution in front of the Maitreya Buddha. Now that the sutra-seeking bliss is not over yet, if you still want to protect the Maitreya Buddha's physical body in this life, now is the best opportunity." The sky-devouring beast had been anxiously waiting at the side, looking at Chunzong several times. He had only seen Chunzong's appearance in the shrine in the Void Continent. Now that Chunzong was standing in front of him, how could he not be excited? Hearing Xiao Hua's words, the sky-devouring beast hurriedly flew to Chunzong, kowtowed to the clouds, and said respectfully, "Master, please accept a bow from this disciple. This disciple is willing to escort Master to the Sutra-Seeking Bliss." Ah! Chunzong could not take it anymore. The change was too sudden, and he really did not know how to deal with it. He looked at the sky-devouring beast in astonishment, then looked at Xiao Hua, and finally his gaze landed on Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva also smiled bitterly. The sky-devouring beast was an expert whose strength surpassed his. How could he decide whether the sky-devouring beast stayed or left? Furthermore, he did not know the origin of the sky-devouring beast, but he clearly saw the fluctuations of the laws of heaven and earth falling on the sky-devouring beast's body. In other words, the sky-devouring beast's true strength might not be at the upper stage of the 8th level of essence force. Such an expert actually wanted to become Chunzong's disciple and escort him back to the hidden immortal continent. How could Chunzong encounter any more calamities? The future arrangements of the Confucian cultivators and the Buddhist sect would be messed up. Such a big matter, how could he make the decision? Not only did Samantabhadra Bodhisattva not know whether to laugh or cry, but even Dragon Horse Zhenfeng and Zhen Han looked at each other. If the sky-devouring beast was not too strong, Dragon Vein Zhenfeng would have jumped out and scolded the sky-devouring beast. I've seen people picking peaches, but I've never seen such a brazen way of picking peaches. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva wanted Chunzong to reject the sky-devouring beast, but looking at the sky-devouring beast and Xiao Hua, he could not afford to offend either of them. However, a bodhisattva was a bodhisattva. He thought quickly and calmly bowed to Buddha body beside him and said, Namantabhadra Buddha, please make a decision on this matter. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of Namo Metriya could shirk responsibility, so could Buddha body. He smiled and said, Namo Metriya Buddha, I am not the Buddha Lord yet. How about we talk about this after I settle the karma between me and Chuanzang? Namantabhadra Buddha. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva was somewhat puzzled, but he still respectfully said, this disciple will listen to the Buddha Lord's arrangement. Buddha body looked at Chunzong who was standing beside Xiao Hua in the distance. With a benevolent expression, he walked step by step towards Chunzong. With each step, an 8-grade lotus throne would appear under his feet. With each step, the void would emit the mournful cries of 10,000 Buddhas. With each step, a sweet rain would fall from the sky. This sweet rain was like the weeping of heaven and earth. It also seemed that the Buddha was moved by Buddha body's sacrifice. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.